Ice Spice is currently receiving a lot of Ozempic allegations. For those who don't know, Ice Spice used to be a lot thicker, but has recently lost a lot of weight in a very short time.
The night of her unaliving, Laura texted her friend and stated, "Tyler has taken me to an open field in Damascus. I'm not sure why we're here, but it's in the middle of nowhere." Her body was found a few days later. Sam and Colby eventually uploaded a video where they were in the same area at the same time, and they captured a woman begging for help. Here's the video.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I got that. Somebody is screaming.
I'm back, it's your boy Fittie to the E, and today we're going to be taking a look at these creepy videos today. You know, I've always wondered if you guys ever thought, where has this intro song come from? Like, I do change up the pitch and the tone of it, but have you guys ever thought, like, yo, I feel like I've heard this intro song before. If you know where my intro song came from, put the song down in the comments. And also, if everything goes right, I'm streaming tomorrow, so make sure to check out the stream. If you guys like the chain, check the link down in the description.
Imagine getting arrested for having a child with a dead body. Jennifer Burrows is a 26-year-old who was working at a morgue when she was arrested after a DNA test proved her child's father was a dead body she was supposed to autopsy. But it actually gets worse from here, because while Jennifer was working as an assistant pathologist at the morgue, she had relations with more than 60 bodies, belonging to men aged 17 to 71 years old. She did this for 2 years until it led to the birth of her son. Her son's father was a 57-year-old veterinarian from Texas who passed away in a car accident in 2017. Jennifer was charged with 158 counts of indecent treatment of a corpse. Many psychologists and experts have debated why someone would do this. The reasons range from curiosity to severe mental illness. Some even believe Jennifer was suffering from psychosis. Alright, after all that, I don't really know how to end this video, so stay safe out there and follow for more.
Oh yeah, I forgot to put a big disclaimer. This video gets crazy. Like, it already started off crazy. Like, this one is crazy. This is a lot of true things that happen, more than like conspiracy theories. It's more like true. But this one is crazy, trust me. Like, watch the end, trust me.
Okay, I've been seeing this all over my For You page and I need to talk about it. This can give you quite the jump scare if you're not expecting it. This woman named Felicity gained tons of media attention in 2018 when she confessed to marrying a zombie doll named Kelly. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but in my opinion, Kelly is looking suspiciously real. Felicity's fascination with dolls came at a young age when her grandmother gifted her a porcelain doll. She became obsessed with collecting dolls over the years, and she grew a wide collection. Her collection ranged from antique dolls all the way to creepy dolls. But everything changed when she found a zombie doll online. Kelly the zombie doll was created by an artist in Thailand. Felicity became intrigued with the doll's unique features and then became obsessed with it. She began treating the doll like a human by giving her a name, dressing her up, and even taking her out. Felicity claims that Kelly has a personality and that they have a deep emotional connection. As time went on, Felicity's feelings grew stronger, and she realized that Kelly was her soulmate. She decided to take the relationship to the next level and propose to the doll. She exchanged vows with the doll and promised to love and cherish her forever. Felicity insisted that this was a genuine expression of her love and devotion. She said that the doll has helped her through hard times and even given her a sense of purpose. Despite the controversy, Felicity remains committed to Kelly. I actually found that they recently started a family of zombie doll children. What a happy family, I guess. In reality, no disrespect to Felicity though, like, you do you, girl. If you love zombie dolls, then you do.
Yeah, that takes focusing me and just doing me to another level, bro. Shorty said, you know what, these guys don't want me, these guys are not for me. I'm gonna make my own doll, my own family, out of what I can make, and screw the dudes, screw the females. I'm not swinging that way. I'm swinging with my zombie doll. Yo, in my opinion, as long as you doing you, bro, W, as long as you doing you.
Did you know that Yellow Jackets is inspired by 2 true stories? The first one is the Donner Party. In April 1876, a group of about 87 people set out on a journey from Illinois to California. Instead of the Oregon Trail, they decided to use a shorter, untested route. By the time they were crossing the Sierra Nevada mountain range, they were low on food and supplies. And between the rough terrain and the accumulating snow, they were stranded by October. A diary kept by Patrick Breen detailed the weeks to come. As members of their party succumbed to the cold, illness, or starvation, they ended up resorting to cannibalism. When a search party arrived to help them in the spring of 1877, they found that over half the Donner Party had died, and as many as 21 had been eaten. After their rescue, the Donner Party survivors became famous, then infamous. And while some denied the cannibalism stories, at least 8 survivors admitted to eating human flesh. Let me know if you guys want to hear the other story that inspired the show.
This mall Santa Claus was also Toronto's scariest serial killer. 67-year-old Bruce MacArthur 8 men in downtown Toronto from 2010 to 2018. He was previously married with a woman and had 2 children with her, but little did they know about his double life. Many people who knew Bruce described him as sweet and outgoing, and they never imagined he would do something like this. In 2010, gay men in Toronto began going missing, and unfortunately, after some time, their cases stopped getting so much attention. Bruce first met these men on dating apps, and when he met them in person, he took their lives. He targeted marginalized men, which in this case were gay men of color. He strangled them and then dismembered their bodies and then put their body parts in planters. Bruce even took photos of his victims when they were alive and then deceased. This is one of his victims who got away after almost being murdered by Bruce. In 2018, police began discovering dismembered body parts of some of the 8 missing men on the property of one of Bruce's clients who hired him as a landscaper. And finally, in 2019, Bruce pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison.
Bother you, they never bother me.
I will be showing the video, but nonetheless, hi, my name is Ethan, and here's everything you need to know in under 1 minute. In September of 2017, 31-year-old Laura Wallen vanished into thin air. Her boyfriend Tyler Tessier had played the part of the worried boyfriend desperate for answers. However, he was living a double life. He had a fiance, and he feared that Laura would expose her pregnancy. The night of her unaliving, Laura texted her friend and stated, "Tyler has taken me to an open field in Damascus. I'm not sure why we're here, but it's in the middle of nowhere." Her body was found a few days later. Sam and Colby eventually uploaded a video where they were in the same area at the same time, and they captured a woman begging for help. Here's the video.
Did you get that? Yeah, I got that. Somebody is screaming. Someone's screaming bloody murder. Whoa. Guys, what the f- do you hear that? Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Dude, that gave me chills, man. Like, imagine just recording, minding your own business, you know, trying to get some content. You actually hear someone dying. At first, you'd probably be like, oh, it's just some kids messing around. But, like, the way you hearing her scream, you'd be like, yo, what's going on? Oh my God, that would trip me out so bad, bro.
Ever heard of America's first serial killer? Herman Webster moved to Chicago in 1885 and actually ironically changed his name to H.H. Holmes after, you guessed it, Sherlock Holmes, the detective. Holmes had quite a bit of medical knowledge, so he opened up a pharmacy near Jackson Park, which actually became the spot of the World's Fair, where he ended up finding a majority of his victims. Holmes purchased an empty lot and turned it into what is known as the Murder Castle. Holmes created this so-called castle with booby traps and a complete labyrinth that made it almost impossible for any of his victims to ever escape. This murder castle had soundproof rooms, booby traps, and trap doors that would even drop you unsuspectedly down into the basement. And once you made it into the basement, you never made it back out. Inside the basement was acid vats, quicklime, and a crematorium for him to easily and quickly dispose of any of the bodies. But Holmes finally made a mistake when he murdered his assistant and his few children, but the police actually ended up finding the body of one of these children, leading to Holmes' arrest. Once arrested, Holmes claimed to have murdered over 200 people over the span of just a few years inside this murder castle. He even went on to write a book about himself, and in it he wrote, "I cannot help that I am a murderer no more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing." Finally, Holmes was hanged for his crimes in 1896.
To disgusting individuals. Hi, my name is Ethan, and here's everything you need to know in under 1 minute. After talking about the Jacqueline Ma case, I wanted to dig a little deeper and see what I could find, and that is when I stumbled upon 36-year-old Randy Cheviera, who also won several teacher awards. Sometime during the fall semester of 2019, she had relations with one of her students. He had later told police that she had performed several non-professional actions on him in the classroom. Police also found out that Randy was texting the student, sending him very explicit messages, which also backed up the student's claim. The school was notified on November 18th, 2019, and the next day she resigned and turned herself in. But here's the kicker, she was released 1 day later.
Yo, if you're a teacher in 2024, or even in the 2020s at all that are still trying to have any sort of relationships with your high school students, I feel like it's natural selection. Like, by now you should pretty much know that the young male or the young female that you're doing things with obviously is going to tell people. Like, I don't think there's been a time, there probably has been a lot of times because we haven't heard about it, where a teacher got away with that, bro. Like, do you want to end up on one of my videos where it's just me being like, yo, what are you doing? I don't think so. So if you're a teacher watching this, don't do nothing with your students, or you could end up in one of my videos. Or even worse, on the news.
This had to be a horrific way to die. It was just an ordinary day in London, February of 1983, and a plumber named Michael gets a call to go out to a location called Cranley Gardens. The tenants were complaining of a horrible smell, the toilets weren't flushing, the pipes were backed up, so Michael shows up and he removes one of the covers to the drains by the side of one of the houses, and he looks down into it and sees a pile of what looks like a slimy, flesh-like substance with little pieces of bone sticking out of it. And he immediately goes, this ain't right. So he calls a supervisor. Supervisor shows up and takes a look, and they say, yeah, let's call the police right now. And while they were waiting for the police to arrive, Michael looked at one of the tenants and said, that flesh almost looks human. And one of the tenants actually replied back to Michael and said, nah, it looks like somebody's been flushing their Kentucky Fried Chicken. However, it was not Kentucky Fried Chicken. Police arrived on the scene and confirmed that the flesh was in fact human. They do a little investigating and realize that the flesh had been being flushed from the top floor. So they go up to the top floor and they knock on the door of a tenant named Dennis Nilsson. Dennis opens the door and the police confront him on the matter, and at first he acts completely shocked. But after a little pushing and prodding from the police, Dennis sighs and he goes, it's a long story and it goes back a long time, but I'll tell you everything. I need to get it off my chest anyway. As the police drove to the station with Dennis Nilsson in handcuffs in the back seat, the officers said, so what are we talking about here? 1 or 2 bodies down there? How many people did you flush? And Dennis just coolly goes, 15 or 16. As it would turn out, Michael the plumber unknowingly led police to a serial killer who makes the Jeffrey Dahmer story look like a nursery rhyme. And just as Dennis had mentioned earlier, he did have a lot to get off of his chest. He explained that he started out trying to have normal relationships and he didn't want to kill people, it just kind of panned out that way. He would have a relationship here, a relationship there, but they would ultimately always end up leaving him, and so he finally found a way to get them to stay. In the 1970s, Dennis had started frequenting gay bars and pubs and luring men back to his apartment with the promise of drinks, and once he got them in there and got them inebriated, he would then proceed to strangle them or drown them. And then once his house guest was dead, he would perform a ritual of cleaning, bathing, shaving, and dressing the bodies, and then posing them in different places around the house, taking photographs, having conversations with the corpses, doing some naughtier things with the corpses, and then ultimately he would stuff the bodies under the floorboards. And he would leave the bodies under the floorboards as long as he possibly could, but ultimately, of course, decomposition would take over, the smell would get to be too much, so he would dismember the bodies, drag it outside, put it in a bonfire, and then mask the smell of burning flesh by putting a car tire on the bonfire. But then Dennis's landlord started remodeling the apartment and actually evicted Dennis, and so Dennis was forced to move into an attic flat where there was no longer access to a piece of land where he could do bonfires. And so he had to start getting creative and find other ways to get rid of the bodies of the people he was killing, and so he began dismembering the bodies into smaller pieces and flushing them down the toilet, which is where our man Michael the plumber ultimately unearthed everything that he had been doing. In a short span of 5 years, Dennis has been confirmed to have killed 12, although he claims to have killed more, and he was guilty of at least 7 more attempted murders. He died in prison in 2018.
Just another case of natural selection. I'd be hearing not to flush cotton swabs or Q-tips down the toilet. Paper towels shouldn't be flushed down the toilet. Cotton balls shouldn't be flushed down the toilet. How the hell are you flushing a human body down the toilet and think you're not going to get caught up for that? Like, people be thinking like this, like you just flush the toilet and then it just instantly just goes into this big pond of just garbage. Like, no, bro. Like, he's got to go through pipes, and the pipes got to go through this filter and all this and all this and all this. And before you know it, you're flushing humans clogged. Everything's clogged. Come on, bro.
A man named Peter Porco hops out of bed, uses the bathroom, shaves, puts on his suit, and walks downstairs to eat breakfast. He then prepares his lunch for work that day, loads the dishwasher, writes a check for his son, and then walks outside to go get the morning newspaper. But when the door shuts behind him, he gets locked out. Luckily though, Peter has a spare key hidden in the flower pot on his front porch. He grabs it, unlocks the door, and opens it slowly just to make sure he doesn't wake up his wife, but out of nowhere, he collapses. Dead. Peter and Joan Porco are your typical modest family that live in a 2-story home in New York. They have 2 sons, John, who serves as a naval officer, and Christopher, who's a student at the University of Rochester, 200 miles away. The couple are both in their 50s and have been married for more than 30 years. Peter serves as a court clerk at the Albany courthouse and is known by his coworkers as a reliable, trustworthy guy. So when he doesn't show up for work on an important court date, everyone becomes a bit concerned. A colleague of his reaches out several times, but Peter never picks up the phone. The coworker then proceeds to drive to his home to make sure that everything is okay, but when he arrives, there's a crimson trail leading from the walkway up to the doorstep, and finally, to Peter. First responders arrive at the scene, and that's when they discover Joan Porco lying in the bed. They're shocked to see that she's alive and conscious because it's obvious she has severe head trauma and there are wounds all over her face. Afraid she won't live much longer, a detective looks at Joan and says, "Who did this to you? Do you know them?" She pauses and it's clear she's not able to make out words. She simply nods, yes. The detective then says, "Was it your son, Chris?" And again, she nods, yes. Joan is then rushed to the hospital, and after 12 hours of emergency surgery, doctors are able to save her life. However, it's clear that she's not 100%. Joan had received trauma with a blunt object 3 times to her head, causing the loss of her left eye and a fragment of her skull. It's revealed that the murder weapon is a 3-foot axe later found in the couple's bedroom. Peter's autopsy report shows that he was hit 16 times with trauma to the head, face, and body. However, the injuries, which tore off a part of Peter's jaw and exposed a part of his brain, were not the cause of his death. It was the blood loss. See, even after such catastrophic injuries, Peter was still able to get up and go about his day as though nothing happened, surviving for several hours. It's also worth noting that in the past 2 years, the Porcos had undergone 2 separate robberies where computers and electronics were stolen from the home. As detectives continue to sift through the evidence surrounding the Porco case, a news reporter makes a call to their son Chris and tells him his parents are dead. He proceeds to call 911 and see if this is actually true, and tells police that he was sleeping in the lounge of his college when his mom and dad were attacked. Now keep in mind, Joan identified Chris as her attackers, so detectives start looking for reasons why he'd be motivated to kill his parents. They begin digging into his past to find that his relationship with Joan and Peter was far from perfect. And just 2 weeks before his murder, Peter Porco had confronted his son Chris about forging his name on a $46,000 check to buy a yellow Jeep Wrangler. Investigators then come across a crucial piece of information. Joan and Peter Porco have a $1 million life insurance policy, half of which is entitled to their son Chris. 3 weeks following the grisly ambush of the Porcos, Joan, who is in a medically induced coma, wakes up. And as she starts coming to, she says that she doesn't remember anything about the night of the attack, and even goes on to defend Chris, saying that her son would never do such a thing. But his mother's defense isn't enough. The evidence keeps stacking up against Chris, with surveillance cameras from his college showing a yellow Jeep leaving campus at 10:30 on the night of the attack. The vehicle returns the following morning at 8:30, and a pair of New York toll booth operators also report seeing a yellow Jeep between the time he left and returned to campus. And when students and staff are asked if they'd seen Chris on the night of his father's murder, no one reports saying that he was sleeping in the lounge of his dorm. Also, if you're still wondering how Peter was able to go about his day with a chunk taken out of his brain, I have your answer. Basically, the paleocortex, the part of the brain responsible for daily tasks, wasn't actually injured during the attack, turning Peter into a real-life zombie, able to go about his day until eventually he bled out and died. A year later, in November 2005, Chris is indicted, and his mother, who is still severely disfigured from the attack, manages to scrape together $250,000 for bail and stay with him every day, arm in arm, until his trial begins in May 2007. Prosecutors argue that from their findings, Chris had manipulated his friends at school, claiming that he was a rich kid, but in reality, he was just a con man. Not only did he regularly steal money from his parents, but he himself was responsible for the 2 burglaries at the Porco home. He'd pawned the electronics off on eBay because mom and dad had cut him off. And when they cut off Chris for a third time, he, in a fit of rage, drove 300 miles in his stolen Jeep to murder his parents and frame it as though it was just a burglary that had gone wrong. The defense, on the other hand, says that no physical evidence actually ties Chris to the crime scene. However, it's this one detail that proves that Chris Porco is a cold-blooded killer. On the night of the attack, someone had used the family's 4-digit passcode to enter the home and turn off the alarm before smashing it. On May 24, 2007, Chris Porco is sentenced to second-degree murder and attempted murder, being sentenced to 50 years in prison. Just how was Chris able to look his mom in her disfigured face and lie to her saying he wasn't the one who did it without feeling an ounce of remorse? A psychologist working on the trial explains this phenomenon best with one word: sociopath.
Did you know that story was so disgusting? Ew. Like, how could you do that to your own mom and father? My thing is, like, I was just questioning, how was his father able to do 7 hours of task while he had his brain basically chopped off? And I'm still impressed that even his mom lived to be for that long, if I'm being honest. But my main concern was, in those 7 hours that he did his daily tasks, did he not know he was injured? Or was he, like, just kind of lost and confused? Like, what the hell just happened? Like, did he get hit so hard that he kind of just forgot that he was injured? Because I'm like, dude, if I get hit up like that and I'm still alive, yo, ambulance. Or if I'm calling the ambulance or driving to the hospital, but I'm probably calling the ambulance because I'm probably not going to be able to drive in that state. I'll probably pass out, crash, and die anyways. But that story took me crazy, bro. Like, that was one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. And the fact that his mom still tried to defend him after.
You know that the movie Jaws was inspired by a true story? Well, let's go back in time. Back in the year 1916, between July 1st and 12th of that year, 5 people were attacked along the coast of New Jersey by sharks, and only one of the victims survived. Let's set the scene. It's the middle of the summer along the Jersey shore. The boardwalk is bustling, the beaches are busy, and the cool ocean water is calling your name. It's Saturday, July 1st at Beach Haven, a resort town on the southern coast of New Jersey. And Charles Epting Van Sant, a 28-year-old man from Philadelphia, was on vacation at the luxurious Ingleside Hotel with his family. On that night, just before dinner, Charles decided to take a short swim in the Atlantic Ocean with a dog that he came across on the beach. So, following the dog into the water, Charles jumped in and swam out into the dark ocean waters. A few moments later, Charles's family noticed that he had begun to scream. Fellow bathers in the water believed that Charles was calling out to the dog he had befriended, but the reality of the situation was much darker. Charles was in the midst of a vicious shark attack, and his legs were being ripped apart by a massive beast under the water. After people on the beach and in the water began to realize that Charles was actually being attacked, a lifeguard named Alexander Ott and a bystander named Sheridan Taylor hopped into the water to rescue him. After grabbing a hold of Charles, who was thrashing and screaming, they pulled him ashore. The bystander, Sheridan, would later claim that the bloodthirsty shark followed them in the water all the way up to the beach. At this point, Charles was bleeding profusely, as his left thigh was stripped of its flesh. And shortly afterwards, he bled to death on the manager's desk of the Ingleside Hotel. This was the first of multiple attacks that would ravage the shore that summer. Despite the brutal attack on Charles Van Sant, kind of like in the movie Jaws, the beaches along the Jersey shore remained open. And although sea captains who were entering the ports of Newark and New York City reported seeing large sharks swimming off the coast of New Jersey, they were ignored. These captains had tried to warn the public, but no one listened. Fast forward almost a week later to Thursday, July 6, 1916. Spring Lake, New Jersey, 45 miles north of Beach Haven where the first attack occurred, was another beachside community where people from New Jersey came to relax and catch some sun. But on that day, a dark force was waiting out in the waters, preparing to attack. That evening, Charles Bruder, a 27-year-old Swiss bell captain at the Essex and Sussex Hotel, was out on the ocean, swimming 130 yards from the shore. Charles had swam many times in these waters without issue. He knew them like the back of his hand. But that day, while out amongst the waves, a massive shark bit him in the abdomen, tearing apart his insides, and then proceeded to sever both of his legs. According to reports from witnesses, the amount of blood spilling from Charles's mangled body actually turned the water red, like something straight out of a horror movie. After hearing the screams, a woman on the beach notified 2 lifeguards that a canoe with a red hull had capsized and was floating just at the water's surface. Lifeguards Chris Anderson and George White swiftly rowed out to Charles in a lifeboat, but upon discovering his shredded and lifeless corpse, realized he had been bitten by a shark. Although the lifeguards managed to pull Charles from the water, he was in shock and bleeding profusely and bled to death before he could make it to the shore. According to the New York Times, women were panic-stricken and fainted as Bruder's mutilated body was brought ashore. This was the second brutal shark attack along the Jersey Shore in just under a week, and although panic was beginning to set in, people were still venturing out into the dark waters. A week later, on July 12, 1916, the next two major attacks would take place in the Matawan Creek near the town of Keyport, New Jersey. Keyport is a quaint village located just 30 miles north of Spring Lake, where the previous attack had occurred, right near the ocean. Keyport itself resembles more of a Midwestern farm town than a beach resort area, and it was the last place anyone at the time expected another attack to occur. Earlier that day, a man named Thomas Cottrell, a sea captain and Matawan resident, was walking home from work across a bridge in town when he spotted an 8-foot-long shark in the creek heading upstream. Obviously, this was alarming to Thomas, and he rushed into town and attempted to tell locals what he had seen in an attempt to warn them. But sadly, the people of Keyport and Matawan dismissed his warnings, citing that he must have been suffering from heat stroke, and no effort was made to tell people to stay out of the water. So now we get to around 2:00 p.m. that afternoon. A group of local boys, including Lester Stillwell, age 11, were playing in Matawan Creek together, near a dock called the Wyckoff Dock. It was an average summer day. It was hot, the sun was shining, and the kids just wanted to cool off in the water. One of the boys had brought along his pet dog, which was swimming with them as well. While swimming near Wyckoff Dock, the boys claimed they saw what appeared to be an old black weather-beaten board or a weathered log, but they brushed it off as nothing. Lester told his friends to take a look at him as he floated on his back in the water, but as he was floating, he was suddenly and violently pulled beneath the water by a massive shark. Lester's friends were helpless and had no idea what to do as they watched their friend violently being thrashed up and down in the creek as Lester's screams filled the air and his blood filled the water. One boy noticed a dorsal fin poking out of the creek, and it was then when they finally realized that Lester was being attacked by a shark. Immediately, the boys got out of the creek and ran to town for help, screaming that their friend Lester was being attacked, and several men, including Watson Stanley Fisher, a local 24-year-old businessman, rushed to help. At first, the adults thought that Lester had been suffering from a seizure and that the boys had imagined the dorsal fin, so they hopped into the water to try locate Lester's body. Quickly, though, they realized they were dead wrong. Stanley Fisher, the businessman, was quickly able to find Lester's body under the water, but as he was pulling it up from the bottom of the creek, the shark attacked him as well, ripping into his leg. It was a crazy and chaotic scene, and in the process, Stanley lost Lester's body and it floated back down into the depths. Stanley's heroism had led him right into the mouth of the beast as well. After emerging from the creek, the townspeople realized that Stanley's right thigh had been severely injured and stripped of its flesh, and he would later bleed to death at Monmouth Memorial Hospital in Long Branch at 5:30 p.m. that afternoon. Lester's body was recovered 2 days later, 150 feet upstream from the Wyckoff Dock area on July 14, 1916. But the shark wasn't done that day. The fifth and final victim, Joseph Dunn, a 14-year-old boy from New York City, was attacked half a mile upstream from the Wyckoff Dock, nearly 30 minutes after the fatal attacks on Lester and Stanley. At the time, Joseph and his friends were swimming in the same Matawan Creek and had yet to hear about the vicious attack that had just unfolded a few hundred feet up the river. The group was still in the water when someone from town ran down to them, yelling at them that they needed to get out of the water because there was a massive bloodthirsty shark somewhere lurking within its depths. Hearing this, Joseph, his friend, and his brother swam to the dock and began to get out of the creek. But just as Joseph was climbing up the ladder to escape the water, the man-eating shark sprung from the creek and chomped down on his left leg. Joseph screamed, and his brother and friend rushed over to help pull him from the shark's jaws, and after a vicious tug-of-war battle with the shark, they managed to pull Joseph out of the water and saved his life. Joseph Dunn was then taken to St. Peter's University Hospital in New Brunswick, where he eventually recovered from the attack, although he lost his leg. After these attacks, the public was in a full-blown panic. Even President Woodrow Wilson got involved and assigned funds specifically to the New Jersey government to help identify and eliminate the shark threat. All across New Jersey and New York, beaches were patrolled by heavily armed guards on boats. Gates were built in the water near the beaches, and entire communities were shut down. This story was front-page news across the entire nation, and everyone was scared to get into the water. In Matawan specifically, where Joseph, Lester, and Stanley were attacked in the creek, a reward of over $2,000 was offered to anyone who could catch and kill a shark in the creek. Residents of Keyport and Matawan patrolled the shoreline for days, firing shotgun rounds into the water and even detonating dynamite in the creek. However, no shark was ever killed or captured in the area. The nickname given to this killer creature would eventually take a hold of the nation, the Matawan Man-Eater. Multiple people claim to have captured and killed the man-eater in the following weeks, but one specific case sticks out amongst others. On July 14th, 2 days after the attacks in the creek, a man named Michael Schleiser was out on a boat in Raritan Bay, the body of water that feeds into the Matawan Creek, only a few miles from the scene of the attacks. As he was on the water, a great white shark attacked his boat. The boat was sinking, and Michael took action and managed to kill the shark with a broken oar before it could kill him. When the shark's stomach was cut open and analyzed, scientists found suspicious fleshy material in bones, and it was eventually determined that the young great white had previously ingested nearly 15 pounds of human flesh, and thus the man-eater story came to an end. There were no more shark attacks on the Jersey Shore that summer, and to this day, they remain far and few. But scientists still don't have a clear answer to the question, what was the Matawan man-eater? The general consensus at the time, and to this day, was that the shark was a great white. Others suggest that it was a bull shark, as they're most commonly found in creeks and rivers and are known to be aggressive. But we decided to go pay Matawan, New Jersey a visit so that we could check out the locations of these brutal attacks ourselves and search for some of our own answers to our questions.
Man, that story was disturbing. I thought sharks don't like eating humans, though. I've heard for the longest that a shark would take a bite of a human and be like, ew. But this motherfucker, he said he ate like 15 different humans. So are they just lying to us, or did that one just have a problem? Because sharks don't even attack boats, but this one attacked his boat. That's kind of weird. Man, that was throwing me off, dude. Those stories were horrifying, man. Thank God we don't have to deal with that anymore. I hope.
Ice Spice is currently receiving a lot of Ozempic allegations. For those who don't know, Ice Spice used to be a lot thicker, but has recently lost a lot of weight in a very short time. She now looks very thin, and it got people speculating on her using Ozempic. Her comments on her Instagram are flooded comments about her using Ozempic and that thick ice was better. The allegations got so bad that Ice Spice had to post a workout routine and claims it is all natural, to show she is actually working hard for her body. But people are not buying it due to the fact of a short period of time it took for her to lose all the weight. For those who don't know, Ozempic is a medication that basically reduces your appetite and slows the movement of food from the stomach to intestine. People are saying that Ice Spice used this to cheat and take the easy way for her rapid weight loss. Due to her weight loss, people are now saying that is not Ice Spice, that is melted ice, and that her workout routine is not enough for that rapid weight loss. There are also other people arguing why do people even care and should leave her alone. What are your thoughts about this situation?
Okay, I'll say this. Okay. Well, the workouts alone definitely is not the reason why she lost that weight. 100%. But her dieting, if she has really good dieting, like she really sticks to her diet, and like no matter what, she's not gonna break that diet, I can see her losing the weight that quickly. But knowing how these celebrities work and knowing the money they have, I'm quick to doubt that she's not on Ozempic, because she definitely lost. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to sit here and judge her and be like, oh yeah, she's on this weight loss supplement. But like, from what I know about celebrities and the whole industry, I would not be surprised if she was on Ozempic. And there's no problem with that. There's absolutely no problem with that. If she feels like she needs to take it, she could take it, because there's a lot of goods and bads about Ozempic. But in my opinion, you know, I don't think people should really care like that. Like, it's just she does what she wants. But again, if you're a celebrity, everyone's going to be talking about you, mostly if you're a popular celebrity. So that's just what comes with the job. So I don't think she should really care. But at the same time, she should really like look at it and be like, you know, it is what it is. Screw what these people gotta say.
Terrifying last words people said right before passing away. An ER physician says he's heard many last words before, but this one was the most terrifying. There was a man who was taking his last breaths as he succumbed to renal failure. And right before he passed away, he said, "I see a bright light, horses, no eyes." Then he started screaming, "No, no, no." And as he yelled, he suddenly woke up, looked up towards the ceiling, and with his last breath said, "I understand." Then right after, he passed away. According to this ER physician, this could be provoked by certain neurotransmitters during organ failure. But sometimes he still thinks that maybe that patient saw more than we're led to believe. Let me know if I should make a part 2 and follow for more.
This is why I would never hire a stranger for a kid's birthday party. And if the photo's not bad enough, the mystery behind it is so much worse. And a reminder before I dive in that if you like all things spooky and true crime, check out my podcast. There's a link to it in my profile. So in the 1940s, the McLaren family in Houston, Texas was having a birthday party for their daughter, Rose. They hired a clown for the party, but an hour before the party started, they get a call from the company saying that the clown they hired was no longer available. They were going to send someone else in his place. And the parents were like, okay, fine, whatever. But then this man shows up to the party. And the kids are all terrified of him. No one really wants to take photos. The man stayed at the party for about 20 minutes and then just disappeared. But get this. After he left, the clown that they hired showed up to the party. And he apologized for being late. And the mother is like, what are you doing here? You canceled on us. And the clown's like, no, I didn't. And it was at that moment that one of the parents noticed that this little boy pictured here was missing. The little boy was never found, and the identity of this man remains a mystery even today.
No, I don't really hate clowns, but I'm really not a big fan of clowns. I remember the 2016 clown attack thing that was happening around Halloween. I was not a big fan of that. If you have any weird experiences with clowns, let me know your stories in the comments.
Creepy unsolved mysteries that might creep you out. Number 10, the Net Cayadito. In the early hours of April 6, 1986, 9-year-old Antoinette was abducted by two men in a brown van from her home. The following year after the disappearance, Gallup, New Mexico police received the following eerie, frantic phone call.
Gallup Police Department. Hello? I'm Antoinette Cayadito. Okay, whereabouts in Albuquerque? Who said it could use a help? Hello? Antoinette, where are you?
4 years later, in Carson, New Mexico, a waitress at a restaurant noticed a couple and a teenage girl who matched the description of Antoinette. After the girl and the couple left, the waitress found the following note under the teenage girl's plate. Antoinette has been missing for 35 years.
This Polish woman is claiming to be the missing Madeleine McCann. But did you know there's age progression photos done of Madeleine that could help us know what she would look like today? In 2007, Madeleine was taken from her family's bedroom while they were on vacation in Portugal. And immediately the parents came under fire because they did leave the kids asleep in the apartment by themselves while they went to dinner with friends. This is the official age progressed photo of Madeleine to age 9, and this is the woman who's now claiming that she is Madeleine. And this woman does have some of Madeleine's signature features. Here you can see a black speck that looks like a pupil in Madeleine's eye, which is something they both share. She's also claiming that she has a lot of missing memories from childhood, but the eye speck does seem to be her most convincing argument. But German prosecutors actually believe that Madeleine is no longer alive. And two people believe they saw this man carrying a small girl towards the beach around the time that Madeleine's parents first noticed that she was missing. But that being said, it's not completely impossible that she would be alive today.
How the hell do they make progression pictures? I'm sitting here thinking like, yo, let's say, God forbid, I die right now. Could they make a progression picture of me when I'm like 65? That'd be odd.
Let's talk about this picture. It centers around Mr. and Mrs. Dubois. They were some of the town of Hackenshaw's favorite neighbors, but they had a dark side to them. But first, we're gonna enjoy some pizza. This is like my favorite pizza. It's from Marco's Pizza. Reminds me of Jersey because I'm from Jersey. You see, they were kind to everyone, even invited people who just moved into town for dinners. They would also have the best decorations for holidays as well. Their house would always win the contest for best decorated in the town. People just loved their Christmas lights and their Halloween decorations. In the beginning of October 1876, they started throwing parties for the kids. All the kids from around the town would come, even from outside the town. It was fun. They played games, they ate candy, and everyone just had a good time. But out of the 20 kids that came over that night, about 4 went missing. And after about 3 weeks of searching, the case went slow and they gave up. Halloween finally came around, and the contest for the best decorations, of course, went to the Dubois. That night while trick-or-treating, one of the boys in town named Sam went up to one of the decorations. When he grabbed the mask off, he realized it was one of the children who went missing. The child was stuffed and put on display in front of the yard as a decoration. The Dubois, who saw this and not wanting to get caught, grabbed the little kid inside, adding him to their collection. No one suspected a thing because the Dubois were so kind and nice to everyone. It wasn't until years later on their deathbed that they admitted at throwing parties every year to steal a child or 3 and told police that they could find all the missing children in their basement. The reason they did it was because they needed decorations realistic enough so they could always win the those contests.
Why is everyone talking about this woman? It's this woman, 59-year-old Debbie Collier, who was a mother and office manager who was found charred alive in the northeast of Georgia. But while I'm sitting here and I'm, researching this case, it's even stranger than I thought it was. Something is deeply off with this story. So here's what we know. September 10th, she is reported missing, and the following day, her van is found, but she's not inside. So the daughter comes forward. She says that, her mom doesn't have any history of mental illness. She wouldn't be trying to hurt herself. So what, happened here? Well, later that day, after the van was found, they go deeper into the woods where Debbie is found on a tarp, described as burned alive. This was a tarp she bought herself at the Dollar Tree, shortly before she was found. Stranger than that, her daughter comes forward and says before she was found, her mom Venmo'd her $2,385 along with this cryptic message. Does that not seem like an oddly specific amount, though?
That's creepy. The mom literally said in the text, they are not going to let me go. Something about the house key. Yo, that's scary. She said, love you, I'm gonna be gone. Yo, what?
Most terrifying demonic activity ever caught on camera.
Bobby, is that you? Bobby. I get it. I get it, man. You're just gonna stare at each other for what? You got me. I don't know what the fuck their problem is. I'm gonna keep doing this shit. I'm just gonna stare at them then. Fuck it, right? Man. Come on, get out, man. Get out. Come on. Go. Go. Man, just go to your room. It's fine. Fucking thing, of course. All right. Yeah. I know, Disney. You got me. Jim, you got me. You got me, man. You got... Okay, it's good. And just stay in your room.
Honestly, I was gonna say, yo, big applause to that guy for actually running away. A lot of people like, oh my god, I gotta go investigate. But he was like, nah, I'm getting out of there. Big W's for that. But it was just the fact that he heard the doorbell ring. He just saw that weird coincidence. So instead of peeping through the window, you know what I'm saying, peeping through the hole, see what's going on, bro just opens the door. He was like, oh, someone's ringing the door. Let me just open it. Come on, bro. He was this close to meeting common sense. This close. This close.
The oldest traceable body on Mount Everest is considered to be that of George Mallory, an English mountaineer who was part of the first British expeditions up the mountain in the early 1920s. He and his hiking partner Andrew Irvine were last seen about 800 feet from the summit before disappearing. In 1999, an expedition up the mountain sought to find Mallory, and they did. Well preserved too. Injuries sustained on his body and circumstantial evidence give some idea as to what happened to him, namely that he slipped, fell, and conked himself in the forehead with his own ice axe. Ugh. We still don't know if Mallory and Irvine reached the summit before their fatal accident, but some in the field believe that Mallory did. They also think he left a photo of his wife at the summit because it wasn't on his body when it was found, and he always carried it. We don't know much about Irvine because his body is still unlocated. And on an eerie note, Mallory and Irvine had a camera with them to record the historic event, which, if ever found, would likely give us some fascinating insight into their journey.
You know, Mount Everest is definitely an adventure. It's definitely something where you could be like, yo, this is one of the craziest things I've ever done. But I'm sitting here thinking, is the risk really worth it? I mean, I know she said they were going to a summit, so it's a completely different reason, but that's a risky hike, man. You're playing with death at that point. But I'm pretty sure there are some people that have climbed. There's a lot of people that have climbed Mount Everest and made it alive. So, but you're playing a game with that one.
Let's talk about this picture. It centers around Mr. and Mrs. Dubois. They were some of the town of Hackenshaw's favorite neighbors, but they had a dark side to them. But first, we're gonna enjoy some pizza. This is my favorite pizza. It's from Marco's Pizza. Reminds me of Jersey because I'm from Jersey. You see, they were kind to everyone, even invited people who just moved into town for dinners. They would also have the best decorations for holidays as well. Their house would always win the contest for best decorated in the town. People just loved their Christmas lights and their Halloween decorations. In the beginning of October 1876, they started throwing parties for the kids. All the kids from around the town would come, even from outside the town. It was fun. They played games, they ate candy, and everyone just had a good time. But out of the 20 kids that came over that night, about 4 went missing. And after about 3 weeks of searching, the case went slow and they gave up. Halloween finally came around, and the contest for the best decorations, of course, went to the Dubois. That night while trick-or-treating, one of the boys in town named Sam went up to one of the decorations. When he grabbed the mask off, he realized it was one of the children who went missing. The child was stuffed and put on display in front of the yard as a decoration. The Dubois, who saw this and not wanting to get caught, grabbed the little kid inside, adding him to their collection. No one suspected a thing because the Dubois was so kind and nice to everyone. It wasn't until years later on their deathbed that they admitted at throwing parties every year to steal a child or 3 and told police that they could find all the missing children in their basement. The reason they did it was because they needed decorations realistic enough so they could always win those contests.
You know, I know that this is like the 1900s, but dude, I guarantee you could find better decorations at your local store. Why are you using real humans? Like, honestly, I don't think Halloween or even Christmas is that crazy where you need to use real people just to win like some makeshift contest that's not gonna benefit you whatsoever. Like, that's an extreme. Like, they're kind of weird for that, I'm not gonna lie.
These are serial killers that got caught for being idiots. And yes, this is a series, so make sure you follow along. This is David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam. He's best known for being the serial unaliver who believed that his neighbor's dog was telling him to commit the crimes. And he was really hard to catch. His attacks felt random and lacked pattern, other than the fact that a lot of his victims were women with long brown hair. But the thing that did this man in was that he parked illegally while committing one of the crimes. Cecilia Davis was out walking her dog one night when she saw a car being ticketed. And then out of nowhere, she sees this figure come towards her with what looks like a gun in his hand. She freaks out and runs away, but hears 2 gunshots get fired behind her. The next day, she learns that 2 people, Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Violante, had been shot in that area. So she calls the police and tells them everything she saw that night. The man with the gun, hearing the gunshots, and seeing the car with the ticket. And the cops did a real quick search through their database and found that the car had been registered to Berkowitz, who was already on their radar. And the second they went to question him about it, he confessed to everything. Erica's family told her they were going on vacation in Lake Tahoe, when in reality they were dropping her off at a troubled teen wilderness program that she would not survive. Erica Harvey was just 15 years old when she was dropped off at the Catherine Freer Wilderness Program. The program promised Erica's family that they could get her off drugs, but the staff were not trained very well. The first day that she was there, the kids all went on a really long hike, and Erica started showing symptoms of dehydration. Erica was also on antipsychotic medication, which was something the staff did not have any experience with. So when she started speaking gibberish and her eyes rolled into the back of her head, they thought she was being dramatic. And when she fell over backwards into a ravine, they completely ignored her. Finally, after an hour, they went to go check on her, but Erica didn't have a pulse. The staff called a medical helicopter, but they didn't know where they were, so they gave them the wrong coordinates. By the time Erica saw a doctor, it was 5 hours later, and she didn't have a chance. And programs like Erica's still exist today, trapping kids like prisoners because they're minors and can't sign themselves out. This week I interview a survivor who was gone for 3.5 years in the troubled teen industry because she was 14 years old when she was taken.
Dude, how are you gonna think someone's joking when they start speaking gibberish, eyes roll back, and just fell into a freaking ravine, bro? No one's doing that as a joke. Unless it's like a boy cries wolf situation where, you know, for those who don't know, The Boy Who Cried Wolf is basically a story of a guy that just kept joking like, oh, wolf, wolf, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's a wolf. And then they just realize that he just keeps lying about it until one day there's an actual wolf, and then he just gets murdered.
On the evening of September 10th, 2002, 31-year-old Miroslav Kuklish was entering an underwater cave off the coast of Croatia, trying to catch up with his 4 dive buddies. He had entered the water about 10 minutes after them because while they were on the surface, the 4 had explained to him that they were going to check out this underwater cave. But Miroslav had told them he wanted nothing to do with this cave. He was just going to go on an open water night dive. So they said okay, and they went without him. Unbeknownst to Miroslav, as soon as the 4 had entered this 2-meter wide hole in the bottom of the ocean, they had immediately recognized it was well beyond their skill level, and they had turned around and gotten right out of there. Unbeknownst to them, though, Miroslav had made the exact opposite decision, and as soon as he got in the water, he went right down to the cave entrance and barreled down after him, and I mean, he really went for it. Now, the way that this cave is set up is there's a 15-meter deep chute, which leads to two different passageways, which lead to two different underwater caverns, the shallower one, or the upper gallery, and the deeper one, the lower gallery. The bottom of the lower gallery is about 54 meters or 180 feet deep. Okay, so what Miroslav does is he dives down this 15-meter corridor. Now, bear in mind, the walls are super narrow in these corridors, and you're kicking up silt the whole time, so you can't see anything. And where the three meet, it's almost impossible to tell which is which, because again, you can't see, and unless you know this cave like the back of your hand, I mean, being underwater is really disorienting. You don't know if you're going to the deep one, the shallow one, or up to the exit. It's kind of just a guess if you don't really know the cave. So he goes immediately down, and he goes immediately into the deep gallery. He makes it all the way down to 165 feet before he realizes he needs to turn around and get out of there. So he makes his ascent back up, and he makes his way back up to where the three separate again. And he needs to find the exit. But instead of finding the exit, he goes into the shallow gallery. And now he is running out of air, and he really needs to find the exit. So he goes back up to where they all three separate, and he's doing this probably mostly by feel now, because again, with the silt, you can't see. So he has a 50-50 shot. But instead of picking the exit, he picks the way he just came from, and he goes back down into the deep gallery. And at this point, we know when he hits the deep gallery again, he runs out of air. And he finds that shallow air pocket at the top of the deep gallery, but he's only got a few minutes of air in that little pocket, and he knows that. We know he was there for 5 minutes from his dive computer before he ultimately decides that instead of drowning, he's going to take his dive knife and end things his way. So he takes out his dive knife and he drives it 11 centimeters all the way to the hilt into the left side of his chest. Unfortunately, he would still drown a few minutes after this. We know this from the autopsy report. A police diver would also drown trying to recover his body.
If you stab yourself in the lung, obviously you're going to still drown from your own blood, if I'm being honest. Like, it's not going to kill you instantly. It's not GTA where, like, you're like, and you're just gone, you know? Like, you're obviously going to drown from your own blood. And not only that, you're going to be so much distress that you're going to fall back into the water from the sinkhole. So I think that was a stupid decision. But, you know, with the lack of oxygen and everything just going wrong, it was just, you know, a bad decision by him. It's understandable, but at the same time, I feel bad for him, dude, because he didn't even really want to do that. He didn't even know his friends weren't even going to do it. They realized that that was just a task that they couldn't handle, and they just dipped out, and he thought they were in there. So RIP to him. It's a sad story, and the police that tried to rescue him.
You can get addicted to a certain kind of sadness, like resignation to the end, always there. I just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke.
A lot of people have been tagging me in this video, so I'm here to explain the backstory to this whole thing. Now, before I begin the video, I have an announcement to make. First things first, I just posted my first YouTube video on the Soviet Lycans case, so if you want to check that out, please do. Link is in the bio. You can also make fun of me for my old YouTube videos. I don't care. Also, in spirit of Scream 6 coming out tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the Scream Killer's case. The girl you see in this video is named Casey Jo Stoddart, the teenager who was killed by her classmates for fun. Now, on September 22nd, 2006, 16-year-old Cassie was house-sitting for her aunt and uncle just a few miles away from her own home. Now, she was known to family and friends for being a straight A student and very responsible. During that night, she ended up inviting her boyfriend, Matt Beckham, to join her at the house. Beckham ended up inviting another friend. His name was Tori Adamick, who ended up bringing along Brian Draper, another friend. Now, these two boys had a death list that contained the name of several of their classmates. One of those names was Cassie Jo Stoddart. Now, the two boys spent about 2 hours in Cassie's house before leaving that night. However, Cassie didn't know that Draper left the basement door unlocked so that he and Admick could get back in. Later that same evening, when the two boys returned, they parked their car down the street, put on dark clothing, gloves, and masks, then snuck back into the residence of Cassie through the basement door they left unlocked. While Stoddart and Beckham watched TV in the living room, the two boys proceeded to make a loud noise in order to lure Stoddart and Beckham downstairs into the basement to quote-unquote scare them. However, when that didn't work, the two boys then located the breaker and turned off the lights in the house. This obviously frightened Cassie, and her boyfriend Beckham called his mother to ask permission to stay the night so that Cassie could be at ease. However, Beckham's mother refused. and insisted to have Cassie to sleep over at Beckham's house, but Cassie declined as she had to watch over her aunt and uncle's house, and she couldn't leave the family dogs alone, as they were seen growling and staring down at the basement, what looked to be nothing. So Beckham ended up leaving her at the care of the family dog. At around 10:30 p.m., Beckham's mom picked him up from Cassie's uncle's house, leaving Cassie alone inside the house. Keep in mind the two boys are still inside the basement. Beckham then called the two boys to see if he can catch up later that night to hang out. He can barely hear the two boys when they answered, as they were whispering very, very low. Now Beckham assumed that they were watching a movie. Of course, they were still in the basement. Both boys were armed with daggers, and Cassie was sound asleep on the living room couch. So Draper, one of the boys, ended up opening and slamming shut one of the closet doors to catch Cassie's attention. However, when this failed, they decided to just attack her. The two boys stabbed Cassie approximately 30 times. 12 of those stab wounds were fatal. Two boys then left her body to bleed out and fled the scene. In fact, before doing this, they videotaped the plan all on camera. Her body wasn't recovered until 2 days after her murder, on September 24, 2006. When it was discovered, it was all covered in blood and riddled with deep lacerations. It didn't take long for investigators to determine who the murderers were, as Tori and Brian were the last two people in Cassie's house, and they were the last two people to see her alive. Investigators also found the tape where they confessed to doing this, as well as found the pile of where the black clothing was, the gloves, the weapons, and the mask, all trying to be burnt up. On April 17, 2007, the two boys were found guilty of murder in the first degree. Both boys received life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 30 years, and they are still serving their sentence to this day.
Honestly, them boys deserve life in prison. I'm happy they got life in prison. Because I'm like, dude, that was so unnecessary. Just for fun.
On May 1st, 2020, in Charleston County, South Carolina, 58-year-old Cynthia Covert was over at her friend and client Barbara's house doing Barbara's nails. And they were doing this appointment on Barbara's enclosed back porch, which overlooked her yard and then a large freshwater pond. Now, Barbara would later state that Cynthia was acting very strangely. Normally, she would be very, very professional, but today, not so much. She was talking a lot. She was just super bubbly. She was talking about her boyfriend who was coming to visit, and it was just totally unlike her. And she had showed up with a bottle of wine, although Barbara said she didn't witness her drink any of it. But anyways, the appointment carries on, and about halfway through, Cynthia looks over at the pond, and she notices that just off the bank in the water, there is a 10-foot or just over 3-meter long American alligator, and she's fascinated by this. And Barbara says, oh yeah, he's been here for the last 20 years, we just don't mess with him. So the appointment continues on, and they finish up, and when they do, Barbara begins to tidy up the porch, move chairs back where they were, when she turns around and notices that Cynthia has made her way down through the yard to the bank, and she's standing really close to this alligator, taking pictures of it on her cell phone. And Barbara immediately begins to yell and scream at her, hey, get back from there. I witnessed this alligator take a deer off the shore just yesterday. And Cynthia yells back at Barbara, and she says, well, I don't look like a deer. Now, Barbara's husband at this point can hear this commotion, and so can a next door neighbor, and both men make their way outside when Cynthia does the unthinkable. She steps in the water with the alligator, and she reaches out and she's going to try and pet it. And as soon as she does this, this 10-foot long alligator lunges forward and grabs her by the left leg and begins to drag her out into deeper water. The two men start sprinting down to the water. The neighbor grabs a rope. They get down there at the same time, and the neighbor throws the rope out to Cynthia. She grabs it, and now the two men are having a tug of war between them and this alligator for Cynthia. And then Cynthia would look up at them and just very calmly say, well, I guess that's the last time I'll ever do that. And then this alligator would put her into a death roll. And it would take her underwater, and they would not see her again. They called the police, the fire department, the police show up. For 15 minutes, they don't see anything, but then the alligator surfaces. It's still got Cynthia's body in its mouth, and then it immediately takes her back down before it resurfaces again. The police shoot the alligator 5 times, once in the head, 4 more times. It releases her. They retrieve her body, which is intact, but her left leg was totally mangled, and she had unfortunately drowned in that 15 minutes.
I was watching that and I was like, yo, I know so many parents that are exactly like that woman that's just like, oh, I'm just trying to pet this really horrifying, destructive animal. In my head, bro, natural selection. Like, you know, there's just people that have the common sense to know, you know, I'm not gonna go close to this thing because it definitely sees me as a prey or even a predator and will still try to hurt me. So I'm gonna just keep my distance. But she was trying to pet the bro, come on, dude. Natural selection, like I'm saying. Natural selection.
There's a lot of shit on P. Diddy being connected to a lot of people's deaths. So recently, there's been an investigation going on and the theories that P. Diddy has connections to Michael Jackson's death. No way. And it's known that he hates the industry. There was a video of him at an award ceremony. They tried to fuck up his career because Michael Jackson basically owned over 50% of Sony Records.
These guys work really hard at their craft. The companies take advantage of them. They never thought that this performer, myself, would outthink them. I own half of Sony's publishing and I'm leaving them. They're very angry at me because of it, but
how is this connected to P. Diddy, right? P. Diddy, he had a head of security, was a guy that any employees that P. Diddy has, if you ever get pulled over in California or in Miami, to call this guy, Fahim, and he'll take care of it. He'll make any problem, any police trouble disappear. So he has power in the police. Michael Jackson died in 2009. That guy, Fahim, in 2008, he graduated from college. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in real estate and business and had no experience in security or anything like that. So how is a guy who just graduated college the head of security already for Michael Jackson, the biggest music artist of all time? Because he was there at Michael Jackson's testimony and he was the second person on the scene whenever Michael Jackson died. Because first it was obviously the doctor who was trying to...
Yeah, that is really suspect. I don't know, man. P. Diddy, there's a lot of things going on with him. Hopefully, like, whatever is true comes out as true. Whatever is false comes out as false. I don't even know, bro. That situation, I still don't even know what's even going on with him. Like, they're saying like a bunch of different stuff. I'm just like, I don't know. I definitely think he probably got Tupac killed. Michael Jackson, though, that might be a stretch.
The creepiest places in the world. Gate to Hell, Turkmenistan. It's been burning for past 40 years, and no one knows when it's going to stop.
Lake Natron, Tanzania.
Due to high levels of salt contents, everything that touches the lake turns to pure stone.
Surprising facts about every single country in the world, part 31. North Korea doesn't tax its citizens. Argentina once had 5 different presidents in 2 weeks. Bulgaria, no army ever has ever captured the Bulgarian flag in battle. Czechia is the most atheist country in the world. Israel developed voicemail technology.
This mother listened as her daughter was mauled by a bear. On August 2011, a 19-year-old Olga Moskolyova went fishing with her stepfather at a river in the village of far eastern Siberia. This area is known for its significant bear population and it's home to one of the largest brown bears in the world. On this day, Olga called her mother and told them that she was being eaten by a bear. At first, she thought her daughter was joking, but then she heard the bears growling and chewing and she realized that this was real. Her mother then called her husband, which is Olga's stepfather, but little did she know he was already deceased. The story is that they were done fishing and were on their way back when they realized that they forgot something. So they walked back to the river and came face to face with a brown bear and her cubs. Olga's stepfather was attacked first and Olga tried to run away, but the bear caught up to her. While Olga's stepfather was already deceased, the bear came back several times to attack Olga until she was dead. But during the attack, Olga was able to call her mother 3 times, and during this call, she told her that she was being eaten by the bear and her cubs. She then ended the conversation by telling her mother that she loved her. The mother called police and they arrived to the location in about 30 minutes and they found the bear still eating her husband's body. Like I said, this area is known to have a lot of bears, so people usually bring protection with them, but it was said that Olga and her stepfather did not.
The scary part about bears is not only are they huge as hell, they are fast as like they're fast. Like bears are so quick, it's actually ridiculous for their size, and I'm pretty sure it's just because they're on all fours.
That will blow your mind. Humans are the only animals that enjoy spicy foods. Potato chips cause more weight gain than any other food. It's impossible to hum while you hold your nose. The least interesting day in history was April 11, 1954. Aldous Huxley and C.S. Lewis died on the same day as JFK. Bigger forks lead you to eat less. The longest living insect is the termite. Chewing gum after a meal reduces heartburn. Dogs can smell cancer. Bees can detect bombs. Follow and comment below which fact blew your mind.
They say it's impossible to hum and hold your nose. We're about to try that right now. Hum.
Hum. Hum. Hum.
Places that look more creepy at night.
Tiptoe through the window, by the window, that's where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me.
I walked out of the theater after seeing Saw X and decided I need more. So here's 3 horror movies you need to watch, especially if you like Saw. First up is this absolutely insane movie called 31, about 5 carnival workers who get kidnapped by crazy killer clowns and forced to play a deadly game called 31. If I had to describe this movie in 2 words, it would be weird and insane. And I mean both as compliments. Next up is a movie I've been waiting to talk about, Dead Silence, which was made by the writers, directors, and producers of Saw. It's about a town with a unique urban legend of a doll maker turned serial killer. It's actually a crime that it has 21% on Rotten Tomatoes. Please watch this and let me know if you agree with me or the critics. I really need to know. And the last movie is also the one that's most similar to Saw, because The Collector was supposed to be John Kramer's origin story, but now it's about a different serial killer who turns different places into traps and collects victims from each of the traps that he makes. I have a whole video dedicated to the Collector series as well, so follow for more.
Here's some of the scariest unknown creatures caught on camera. Part 6. This drone footage captured in the deep parts of the Salt Fork Park in Ohio captures what may be evidence of the elusive Bigfoot. As the drone begins to land, pay attention to the thickets and tell me what you think.
Here's some of the most random fun facts you will ever hear in your life. Armadillo shells are actually bulletproof. One time a man was hospitalized when he shot at an armadillo and the bullet ricocheted off the shell and hit him instead. There's only one letter in the entire alphabet that isn't in any US state name, and that letter is Q. There's not a single state with the letter Q in its name. 71% of the earth is covered in water, and humans can only use 0.007% of that water. 2.5% of the total water is fresh water, and only 1% of that is actually accessible. The bumblebee bat is the smallest mammal in the entire world. These things can rest on your fingertips and you might not even know because they weigh 0.05 to 0.07 ounces. Ostriches are the world's largest and heaviest living bird. It's why they can't fly, but they are built for running, and they can reach speeds of up to 43 miles per hour, and they can pretty easily coast at 30 miles per hour. The longest English word is 189,819,000 letters long. It's a protein and its nickname is titin, and it would take around 3.5 hours to say the word out loud.
He murdered his great-grandmother for $133. In 2012, 13-year-old Antonio Barbo and his best friend Nathan Papp both murdered grandmother in the most horrific way. On that day, Antonio's mother drove the kids to her grandmother's house, 78-year-old Barbara Olson, but she had no idea what they were about to do. The two teens tried to sneak into Barbara's house, but then she heard them, so she invited them inside. Once Barbara turned around, her great-grandson hit her with a hatchet. Barbara was hit 27 times and had wounds all over her hands and arms, indicating that she tried to defend herself. The teens stole Barbara's jewelry along with $155 and then used that money to buy drugs and pizza. They tried to drag Barbara's body into her car, but when they couldn't pick her up, they just left her in the garage. Barbara's body was found 2 days later by her own daughter, and the boys were arrested not long after. Nathan argues that he thought Antonio was just joking about murdering own great-grandmother, and he only participated because he was afraid that Antonio would turn on him. Antonio's grandmother, who's also the victim's daughter, spoke out and said that her mother was not a vindictive person and she would have wanted Antonio to have another chance at life. And Antonio's defense really tried to argue that he had a brain injury back in 2009 and that's the reason he did what he did. But none of that mattered because both of these teenagers were sentenced to life in prison and are eligible for parole in 2048.
These are things that don't exist anymore. Up first is Heinz Purple Ketchup. I never had this or even seen it, but I heard it was really good and everybody liked it. Next up are house phones. Everybody had house phones back in the day, but once cell phones started to blow up, these kind of went outdated. Yes, I know some people have them, but not a lot of them do anymore. Next is cursive writing. Kids nowadays can't even read cursive writing and can't even write in cursive. The only thing that is cursive now is signatures. When I was growing up, they made us write cursive and learn it. But nowadays, they just don't.
Yeah, same for me. When I was growing up, I was learning to write cursive, and it was actually mandatory for me to write in cursive. But as I went into like high school and stuff, I started to see that no one really used cursive. And it was kind of just like, what was the point of me learning it for 3 years?
Today I googled what is the #1 thing that people say they regret before they die. So the following is according to a nurse who spent several years caring for patients in the last 12 weeks of their life. So regret number 5 on the list is that I wish I had let myself be happier. Regret number 4 on the list is that I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. She said that many had become so caught up in their own lives that they had forgot their golden friendships and let them slip by as the years went on. Regret number 3 is I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Now regret number 2 is that I'd wish I hadn't worked so hard. She said that this came from every male patient that I nursed. They had missed out on their children's youth or their partner's companionship. And regret number 1 was that I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. Most people had not even honored half of their dreams and that they had to die knowing that it was due to the choices that they had made or not.
Dang, that last one where he said he wished he lived a life true to himself, that one hit hard. So if a lot of you guys are older right now, just remember what those people regretted and try not to fall into the same trap.
Tiptoe through the window, by the window, that's where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me.
Here are some creatures you should be glad are extinct. The Gigantopithecus holds the record for being the largest ape to ever live. They grew to be around 10 feet tall, weighed over 1,200 pounds, and lived in what is now southern China for 6 to 9 million years. They eventually went extinct at the beginning of the Pleistocene ice ages around 100,000 years ago. Scientists believe that this primate walked on all fours like modern apes do, while others believe that they walked with a bipedal or human-like motion, but there is no way to tell who's correct. Due to the way their teeth and jaws were constructed, they had the ability to crush, cut, and grind down almost anything, including very tough and fibrous foods. With all this in mind, this is not an animal you would want to come across in the jungle.
This delivery person has quite the imagination. In fact, he hates his job, so he came up with an idea to make it more interesting. Look at how he delivers his packages. He attached a hoverboard to the back and a wheel to the front so he can move around like a car. And the best part is that he can place his bag on the wheel. He thought of absolutely everything.
That is actually crazy. I wonder if he ever slipped and lost his balance and just fell face first onto the pavement. I feel like that's a very high possibility.
Here are the worst mistakes ever made by teachers, part 3. When it comes to discussing serious topics in the classroom, like the slave trade, the teacher should talk about it with care and sensitivity. But a social studies teacher from the Bronx named Patricia Cummings didn't do this. She had black students lie down on the floor as a demonstration, and allegedly stepped on at least one student's back. She was, of course, fired, but she decided to sue the New York City Department of Education for $120 million. million. Next, an elementary school teacher from Wales named Elizabeth Davies was in charge of a group of students that had a good number of Bangladeshi students, and she complained that those students constantly smelled of curry and would spray them with air freshener. Needless to say, she was let go. And a teacher from Florida was so fed up with the disruptive students' behavior that she taped the student's mouth shut. She then tried making a point that what happens in her classroom stays in her classroom. Except then this story hit the local news and it became a sticky situation for her.
The older I get, the more I realize like teachers are literally just normal people. Like, I don't know why, but when you're a kid, you know, when you're in high school or middle school, for some reason you look at teachers a little bit different. You're just like, oh my God, it's the superiors. But as you get older, it's like, yo, these are just regular people that are just working a regular job.
Last words of Satanists before dying. Aleister Crowley. I am perplexed. Anton Lavey. Oh my, what have I done? There is something very wrong. David Hume. I am in flames. Voltaire. I am abandoned by God and man. I will give you half of what I am worth if you give me 6 months of life. Sir Francis Newport. Oh, that fire! Oh, the insufferable pangs of hell. Thomas Paine. Stay with me, for God's sake. I can't bear to be left alone. Oh, Lord, help me.
Did bro just say, oh, Lord, help me? Ain't you a Satanist, bro?
These are the world's freakiest land animals. In 2022, a TikToker named Caustica uploaded a video that showed a weird-looking creature running around his backyard. Once the video went viral, wildlife experts took to the comments to explain that it was a lesser blind mole rat. And this is because of how its tiny eyes are nearly tucked under its skin. They spend most of their time underground creating tunnels with their massive teeth. In 2020 in British Columbia, a woman was walking around when she saw a bug that looked like a tarantula with wings. She then shared a photo of the bug to Facebook, where wildlife experts explained that this was a very big moth called a polyphemus moth. These moths have huge bodies, and despite their scary looks, they don't have mouths to bite. And they have a lifespan of about 2 weeks. And in 2024 in Sydney, Australia, a TikToker named Blonde heard a weird tapping sound coming from her window at night, and she went to investigate. And what she found is like something out of nightmares. At her window, a bat was tapping on the glass, trying to find a way to escape the storm. And it stayed around until the next morning, where Blonde had to call a bat expert to come remove it. But this turned out to be a non-aggressive species of a bat known as a flying fox. And they only eat fruit or flowers. They also struggle to keep warm when they're wet, which explains why it was at her window. Now I just feel sorry for the little guy.
Like some bats could be around here. Some are a lot smaller. Some are really small. So yeah, that should probably be really scary for her, mostly if it was storming outside and she just woke up randomly just to hear knocking and just see that. I'd be terrified, bro. If you guys have been thinking about starting a YouTube channel or a YouTube journey, obviously you need a trusty mic like this. And you might even need a gaming chair. This is not really needed, but it's very comfortable, trust me. Headphones and a lighting ring. So if you guys want any of that, I'm promoting some of these products in my affiliates. So you just click the shop icon and the product should be listed.
This skier is about to do something terrifying. In fact, he's a world champion in skiing, and during his competitions, he developed a unique technique to go much faster and especially much further.
Sorry, but I'm number one.
The whole Nikocado avocado situation is completely fake and driving everybody insane. At least that's what a lot of people are saying on here. Let me explain. So yesterday I'm sure you saw this video where he revealed himself finally after a few months of not being active. And of course the majority of you remember him like this over the past few years making content across various platforms. Now people are going crazy saying how the hell is it possible he lost this much weight in between 2 and 7 months? Is it Ozempic? Is it, I don't know what's going on. Which has led many people to believe that these are actually all pre-recorded. Because this is what he used to look like 8 years ago. So people are saying that basically all that time ago he pre-recorded all of these videos ready to put them out and basically prank everyone. Especially many people cottoning on to the fact that he has this bird in this video, which he had a long time ago and apparently the bird died. But he said he got a new one. However, this video that he posted yesterday was of the Charlie XCX Apple dance, which obviously is a new trend, so how would this be pre-recorded? And he said it's not been 2 months, he's basically pre-recorded these videos over the last couple of years during his transformation. So all the content the last couple of years was pre-recorded, and the stuff now is finally the real him. It's definitely interesting, and I mean, congrats to him for losing that much weight, it is crazy. And as always, hit that follow button, and I will keep you updated.
Bro did not lose that much weight going to the gym or doing no cardio. That was straight Ozempic. And you want to know how I know? Because you see, I don't even know if he has loose skin. I wonder if he has loose skin. Because you see, if you look at him, it doesn't even look like he's been working out or been in the gym or nothing like that. He looks skinny as hell. Bro just been injecting things into him and just not eating. It's actually not that hard to lose a lot of weight if you just don't eat. Like, I promise you, if you just don't eat for a little bit, your body will literally shred fat. That's pretty much what Ozempic does.
This is a scary story about the bath. Jennifer was sitting at her desk in her room. She was finishing up her homework when she suddenly got a text from a number she did not recognize. The text message said, "Take a bath and go to bed. It's a school night, Mom." Jennifer thought her mom's phone died, and she used somebody else's phone to text her. She already planned on taking a bath, so she undressed and grabbed a towel and walked into the bathroom. She stopped in her tracks and was surprised that the bathtub was already filled. "I guess my mom filled it in advance," she said. She then shrugged her shoulders and got in the bathtub. When she was in the bathtub, she became aware of a burning sensation all over her body, and it got worse and worse until she was crying. She then jumped out of the bath, but it was too late. The water was blood red, and the skin on her arms and legs were beginning to peel off. She was dripping blood and skin. She then picked up her phone to call the police, but there was a new text message waiting for her. It said, "Next time, bathe in water." Jennifer then heard laughter behind her, and standing there was a man holding an empty container of sulfuric acid.
Before hiking this trail, there is a warning sign that states if you have difficulties passing through the 2 posts, you should not continue. People have been calling nature fat-phobic and that it should be widened for plus-sized people, but the sign is warning people that the canyon is very narrow to avoid anyone getting harmed. What do you think?
If anything, they should be thanking those people for having that warning sign. People are just so sensitive nowadays. They're talking about, oh, nature is fat phobic.
These are human body parts that may disappear in the future. First up is body hair. Originally, it protected ancient humans from harsh weather conditions. However, over time, with modern clothes and changes in environmental conditions, human body hair has significantly decreased and continues to do so. Many scientists believe it might eventually completely disappear. Next are wisdom teeth. They used to serve an evolutionary purpose for ancient humans who had much rougher diets and needed more chewing power. But our diets have softened and our jaws have become increasingly smaller. As a result, they have no space to properly grow in, and many people need to have them surgically removed. Many babies are now being born without wisdom teeth, and scientists believe this will eventually be the standard. Finally, we have male nipples. Everyone starts as female in the womb, and before the Y chromosome kicks in for males, nipples have already formed. When the baby becomes male, the prolactin levels decrease, making the male nipples non-functional. So while it's debated, some scientists think they'll disappear.
Honestly, I would not doubt that, but seeing a nippleless man would be so crazy. I'd be like, what the hell? That dude looks like a freaking cyborg.
A list of historical facts that will mess with your perception of time. The last execution by guillotine in France happened after the first ever Star Wars premiered. What? The corporation Nintendo, that was formed the same year that Starry Night was painted. By Vincent van Gogh. The Roman Empire fell in 1453. And America was discovered 40 years later in 1492. Those 2 points in history are miles apart in my head. In 1861, Italy became an official country. And in 1886, Coca-Cola was invented. They were probably serving Coke at the 25-year anniversary of Italy itself. Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman, both prominent female figures in the civil rights movement, were alive during the same time. Like for a few months, but that's still crazy. In 1686, Isaac Newton came up with the 3 laws of motion. And in 1692, the Salem witch trial started. We were doing so well with science. And then we were just like, oh no, women are witches actually.
We are just getting some tragic news that 17 students have just been killed and 13 others have been seriously injured after a fire broke out at a school dormitory in Nyeri, Kenya. And that number is sadly expected to go up as there are still another 70 children missing. Now, we do not know what caused the fire yet, but what we do know is that there were more than 150 kids in the dormitory when the fire caught at around midnight. And the reason it was so deadly is that most of the buildings in the school are made out of wood, so it spread rapidly. The average age of the victims is he's only 9 years old.
John Chow hired 2 fishermen to take him out to this little island in the Indian Ocean. The next morning when the sun came up, John asked the fishermen to take him in a little bit closer, but the fishermen refused. So John puts a kayak in the water and he begins paddling into this island. He sees someone come out of the forest who has their face painted yellow. They all start looking at each other and they start screeching and running down the beach towards John. John stands there until they come all the way up to him. They don't shoot him with arrows, but they take his kayak. And then at some point, a child pulls his bow and arrow out and fires a bow directly at John. And he was holding a Bible and he stopped the arrow with his Bible. And at that point, John is like, okay, I gotta go. And he jumps in the water and without a kayak has to swim a mile to get back to the fishing boat. And so the next day, he told the fishermen he wanted them to drop him off and he would swim in and he wanted them to leave and be completely out of sight. And so the fishermen drop him off and they leave. The next day, when the fishermen come back to collect John, they see these people dragging his body by a rope. No one knows exactly what happened to John, how they killed him, but it's too dangerous for anyone to go back and retrieve his body, and so his body remains at North Sentinel Island. The few hundred people that live on North Sentinel Island that were responsible for killing John Chow, they're referred to as the Sentinelese, and they are unbelievably primitive. The Sentinelese want only Sentinelese on that island. No one else can be there. If you're not a Sentinelese and you try to go to their island, they'll just kill you.
You know, I'm really sad to say this. I hope John's family is not watching this video, but I feel like those Sentinel people just has his head just on like a little display thing. I don't know why that just popped into my brain, but I was like, I feel like they'd be the type of tribe to do something like that. Prayers go out to his family though.
I be seeing so much debate on this app about Taylor Swift surpassing Michael Jackson, which is crazy because anybody who believes Taylor Swift is even in the same sphere, even in the same planet as Michael Jackson, you're wild. Because before Taylor Swift could ever even get close to Michael Jackson, she has somebody else she needs to surpass. This guy right here. Bro, like it or not, Cristiano Ronaldo, in terms of fan impact, in terms of global impact, he might be the closest thing we've ever had to Michael Jackson, bro. This man has 636 million followers. That's over 500 million people that follow him on the internet. Just the other day, he announced he's finally dropping a YouTube channel. And within 90 minutes, this man got 1 million subscribers, bro. He's sitting at almost 4 million subscribers already. This shit is absolutely ridiculous. You know how hard people work in their life to get 1 million subscribers? Perspective, bro, it took Mr. Beast 2,908 days to reach 20 million followers. Ronaldo did that in literally just 24 hours, bro. I don't want to hear no more talk about Taylor Swift until she surpasses Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think Taylor Swift has to pass Ronaldo and not worry about Michael Jackson right now because Michael Jackson's just a different beast. So I don't think they compare at all.
There are 10 creepy, disturbing, and scary facts you didn't know. Part 2. Today's high school students have the same anxiety levels as insane asylum patients had in the 1950s. Until 1974, it was illegal to appear in public in the city of Chicago if you were ugly. During the early 1990s, a serial killer named Joseph Metheny owned a burger stand located in Baltimore, Maryland. After his arrest in 1996, he confessed to feeding his customers the flesh of at least 3 humans he had murdered. A new homeowner was shocked to find a rag doll boarded up in a wall cavity, clutching a note saying she killed a family. In 1977, we received a radio signal from space that lasted 42 seconds. To this day, we still don't know where that signal came from. The movie The Hills Have Eyes was based on the true story of the Bean Clan, a Scottish family who would secretly ambush, kill, and eat travelers for 25 years. In 1957, 2 sisters, Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock, were killed in a tragic car accident. A year later, their mother gave birth to twins, Jennifer and Jillian. Then it gets weird. Jennifer, the younger twin, had scars and birthmarks on her body that were identical to Jacqueline's, the deceased younger sister. The twins began to ask for toys that had belonged to the deceased girl, toys they had no knowledge of. Albert Fish, an American serial killer, boasted that he killed in every state and claimed to have had over 100 victims. What makes him even more sickening is that he sent letters to his victims' parents to tell them how good their children tasted. A man named Francesco Lentini had 3 legs, 4 feet, 16 toes, and 2 sets of functioning male genitals. He worked for a circus and lived until the age of 78. In 2011, Anatoly Yurovich was arrested after 12 dolls were found in his apartment. However, they weren't regular dolls. They were recently deceased little girls that he had dug up, dressed up, and displayed. Like for part 3.
I can't believe they said that dude have 2 sets of dick. Yo, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I think that would be kind of cool, actually.
This is why you should never trust strangers you meet on vacation. When Ben and Louise Dalton take a trip to Italy with their daughter Agnes, they befriend a charming British family that persuades them to visit their remote country estate in England. And the Daltons are hesitant to accept the invitation at first, but they decide it might just be the trip they need. But once they get to Patty and Kira's remote, secluded farmstead, far away from anyone and everything they've ever known, Ben, Louise, and Agnes discover that who they thought this British family was on vacation isn't exactly who they are at home. And over the course of the trip, they spot several red flags, but each time Patty assures them that there is good reason for his unique behavior. But when the daughter Agnes discovers that something evil is about to happen to the family, they've had enough. But it might just be too late. But if you want to know what happens next, you'll need to check out Speak No Evil in theaters now.
Okay, so are we gonna die in 8 minutes? Okay, so the sun may have exploded and we wouldn't even know it for at least 8 minutes. Light from the sun takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds to hit Earth. Meaning if the sun suddenly blew up, we actually wouldn't know for that period of time. This is because light travels faster than anything else and we wouldn't be able to hear an explosion from space. While this can cause a lot of anxiety, our sun will never explode. It doesn't have enough mass to create a supernova. A star needs to have a mass of 10 times that of our sun in order for it to explode. If the sun were to explode, it would take around 134 days for the shockwave to reach Earth. But the neutrinos and radiation travel at the speed of light and would reach us in 8 minutes and we would all die. So realistically, we can all die in 8 minutes at any given time in our life, because we would have no idea that the sun exploded in that time. This is extremely scary, not only because we would all die, but because it's completely out of anyone's control.
Celebrities who changed their looks after becoming famous. Doja
But
Cat.
the thing is, like,
Before.
it's like a peekaboo to, like, what's next. So, like, once you see it from the front, like, that.
And now.
Who made it? Wow. Wow. Okay, so something a little different. So, what was your inspiration for tonight? Wow. Wow. Wow.
Sam Smith.
Before. You would have thought the more that you travel, the more okay you get with flying, but I'm finding it really hard.
And now. Melanie Martinez. Before. And now.
This is a sneak peek that nobody knows about. So people have been asking about the Crybaby perfume restock, and we can't do that just because the manufacturer doesn't exist anymore.
Bro, what's this trend going around with all these celebrities as soon as they get super famous? Like, you know, they start out normal. They're like, yeah, you know, it's really cool making millions of dollars just singing about whatever. And then boom, out of sudden they're just demons. Just like, yeah, devil, devil, devil.
She set her husband's private on fire after he cheated on her. Rajini Narayan lived in Adelaide, Australia with her husband Satish Narayan. They got married in July of 1986 and had a typical arranged Hindu marriage. Within that month, Satish has started to physically and verbally abuse Rajini. Rajini felt like this was all of her fault and she deserved how he was treating her. Rajini kept thinking to herself, if only she was the perfect wife, this wouldn't be happening to her. This would go on throughout their whole relationship. In December of 2008, Rajini found out that Satish was having an affair with another woman. As they were laying in bed together, she decided she was going to confront him about the allegations. Satish did nothing to console Rajini, who was hurt, frustrated, and angry. Instead, he called her a fat B-word. At that moment, Rajini lost control. She doused him in gasoline and lit his private area on fire with an angel candle that a fortune teller had gave her. With doing this, Satish lost his life. Rajini claimed that she didn't intend to unalive Satish, she just wanted to purify his private area and to stop the affair with the other woman. Rajini was acquitted of murder, convicted of manslaughter, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. The Supreme Court ended up overturning the verdict and released her on a 3-year, $1,000 good behavior bond.
What I'm trying to figure out is, how did the husband let that happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, was he sleeping and then she was just like, freak this dude, gag. Or was he just there just like, yeah, baby, light me up, shorty?
So these videos of Diddy with Justin Bieber when he was only 15 years old are resurfacing, and the one thing that I want to ask is, why was a 40-year-old hanging around with a 15-year-old? Why did no one think that was an issue or a red flag? And also, listen to what he says in this clip.
They're having the times of their lives, like you know, where we hanging out and what we doing. We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. You know, I have been given custody of him. You know, he signed to Usher.
I'm signed to Usher.
I had legal guardianship of Usher when you know he did his first album. I did Usher's first album. I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So and we gonna go full crazy.
I'm going crazy.
Crazy.
I'm taking this out tonight.
What you want to do? What you want to do over the next 48 hours?
This is literally the definition of grooming, and Justin, who was only 15 here, he was new to the industry and definitely very impressionable. Now that all these new allegations of Diddy have been exposed, it makes watching this video so much more disturbing. Now, this next video of Justin Bieber with Trey Songz and Odell Beckham years ago at one of Diddy's parties is questionable. I'm not going to say anything, but you let me know what you think you saw down here.
Tell me why, like, last night I actually saw that TikTok video. I'm like, hey, yo, is Justin Bieber giving Odell the guac 10,000? But then I was just like, nah. I looked in the comments and a bunch of people were like, oh, well, they actually looked like they were just doing drags. They were just, you know what I'm saying? And then I was just like, that makes sense.
Top 5 most Christian countries in the world by highest percentage of Christian adherence. Russia 73.6, United States 79.5, Brazil 90.2, Philippines 93.1, Mexico 95.
These are the top 5 craziest things revealed by this year's unprecedented global droughts. So at number 5 is the creepy hunger stones in Germany and Czech Republic. They were used to mark desperately low river levels and forecast famines. This one from 1616 says, if you see me, cry. In 4th place is Hitler's Black Sea Fleet, which sank in 1944. A whopping 10,000 explosive devices were found hidden within the exposed wreckages. In 3rd place, we've seen the extreme drought over in China reveal 3 ancient Buddha statues that are estimated to be over 600 years old. In 2nd place, and moving over to the USA, the droughts in Texas have revealed unbelievably well-preserved dinosaur footprints that date back more than 100 million years. And then the number 1 wildest thing that these droughts are exposing is a whole lot of dead bodies. Now, there's been reports of dead bodies being found in drying lakes around the world, but none more than in Lake Mead near Las Vegas. So far, there has been 4 separate discoveries, one of which was the body of a man found crammed inside a rusting metal barrel. Experts are predicting that dozens, if not hundreds more, might be found.
A gang of vicious otters attacked an innocent jogger and left her hospitalized. The 8 hungry beasts charged through a recreation park looking for...
How you nearly get packed up by a group of otters? I seen a lot of comments saying that, you know, making fun of the woman, and you know me, I'm not gonna miss a chance to spread the gospel on this malicious, mame-happy tube warrior with teeth. Y'all know about the honey badger, an aggressive bull-cut bully weasel, a certified felony ferret with an alleged affinity for ball biting, a homicidal mobile Oreo that fades venomous snakes as a side hustle. Call it an erectile dysfunction the way they could put a snake out of order. There was one honey badger who nearly got census subtracted by a group of lions, spent weeks in an animal ER just to get released and immediately try to run it back fresh out. We been knew this bush weasel is a literal manifestation of a walking middle finger, but imagine if they were a little more intelligent, ran in packs, and could run fades on land or water. Well, I just described why you otter put respect on this furry halo effect of salt sausage. Otters are in the same family as wolverines and honey badgers. They're just social and considered more intelligent. And believe me, a river otter on its own is already a cell block D menace. I couldn't even tell you what crime's getting committed here. And they're a whole lot less cute when you've seen them massacre a monkey at a zoo. That is a Jujutsu Kaisen level jumping with a waterboarding for dessert. Then you got the fact that otters in the Amazon can grow to 6 feet long, and I'm an honest 5'11". And you can kind of see how a hydrodynamic hood-affiliated honey badger can attitude adjust a jaguar. Look at that, all gas, just in reverse, dead ass like a donkey in a hearse. So before you go making fun of this woman, understand that gang violence is not a laughing matter, especially when it's otter mafia.
The otters did her crazy. I'm thinking like, couldn't she just run away? I don't know if otters are that fast out of water, but me personally, I would have just did the dash. And if that didn't work, bro, I'm fighting all of them. That would be kind of hard, but I'm still doing it.
Here are 3 of the most disturbing facial reconstructions and the chilling backstories behind them. But before we get started, I did make a YouTube channel for everybody who requested. If you want to subscribe, the link is right in the bio. Alright, let's get into it. Number 1. The Irondequoit Jane Doe. Found buried in a shallow grave in New York State, the manner of death was ruled as suspicious, but there were no signs of trauma found on her body. Once found, her remains were so badly decomposed that it's suspected she may have been buried there for up to 30 years before being uncovered. Number 2. The Philadelphia teen. Discovered to have been shot and possibly burned, his remains were found near the railroad tracks in Philadelphia in 1977, and he was the victim of a horrific homicide. To this day, he has never had any friends or family that have come forward to claim his identity, and he remains unknown. Number 3. The Swimsuit Boy. He is one of the only unidentified bodies to come from the Dean Coral serial killings. Discovered buried beneath the shed, among others, his remains were wearing a multicolored swimsuit, hence the name. And it's not at all that this is a bad reconstruction. It's actually unsettling to me because it's pretty good. When you're looking at it, it's almost like the eyes are looking right back at you. It's that realistic. But what makes it all that more eerie is that it's linked to a missing boy that no one has ever claimed.
And this was the moment she was caught poisoning her husband. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. It all started when U.S. Air Force employee Roby Johnson was stationed in Germany back in March of 2023. With him was his wife Melody Johnson, who had filed for divorce, but they still lived together while it was being finalized. He began noticing that his morning cup of coffee was tasting a bit weird, but continued on drinking it for around 3 weeks. He eventually decided to test it with a pull test strip, and it showed high levels of chlorine. That is when he launched his own internal investigation and caught her in the act. She was caught multiple times on video pouring bleach into his coffee maker. Now, he didn't want to raise any alarms in Germany, so he waited, kept pretending to drink the coffee until they were back in Arizona in June. While back at the Air Force Base, he recorded her doing it yet again and reported it to police. Now, they told him the evidence wasn't quite clear enough, so he decided to enhance his setup. More and better cameras disguised as smoke alarms, which caught her clear as day. She was arrested, and he fully believes that she was out to get his life insurance money. Imagine living with someone for months knowing that they are actively trying to kill you.
Yo, that got better than me, because right there and then I would have been on her so crazy. I'd have been like, yo, I know you trying to kill me, shorty. Bro, that got better than me, bro. And like, she don't think that someone would smell bleach? Like, I feel like you could easily taste and smell bleach because that's a strong substance. Bleach is not somewhere it's just like, oh, you know, maybe it's just like the coffee just like was just cleaned with bleach. Like, no, you can, like, it's strong.
Times when companies dissed others, part 3. In 2001, Coca-Cola announced they sold 4 more times than Pepsi. So Pepsi, being salty, decided to create this whole ad of a boy going to a vending machine, getting 2 Cokes from the vending machine, just so he can stand on the cans and get a Pepsi. They are honestly ruthless for this. Next, in 2014, Mercedes made a commercial showing how a chicken can keep their head still while their bodies move, saying Mercedes can do the same thing with their car stability. However, the car company Jaguar saw this and decided to make almost the exact same commercial. But at the end, a jaguar straight up destroys the chicken. That's cruel.
This gymnast forgets to salute to the judges, and they get very butthurt about that. So the gymnast lands it well, but now is the point where he should salute to the judges, but he forgets that. And this is what the judges do. As you can see, they took it really personally. Do you think he can be forgiven?
2024 just got even crazier, part 16. Firstly, a Canadian man who was about to go on an upcoming camping trip used Google Maps to see the area that he was going to be camping. Well, while on Google Maps, the man discovered this, and experts believe that the man just discovered a very possible ancient meteor impact while on Google Maps. The fact that he found this using Google Maps is wild. Next, also in Canada, a woman who was at a barbecue started playing with these water guns with a child.
Well, while playing with the water guns, she accidentally sprayed the neighbor who was cutting grass next door. Well, the man got angry and called the police, and somehow the woman was charged with assault with a weapon. Finally, a 57-year-old man was about to have burgers when the burgers were frozen together. So he got a kitchen knife to separate the burgers, but while he tried to separate them, he accidentally stabbed himself and the man unfortunately passed away. RIP, this is horrible.
Whatever you do, do not look up what this guy did. Now, you may know this guy, TJ Lane. He did a horrific school shooting back in 2012. But you probably don't know what then happened when he went to court. For one, you can see him with little to no remorse in the court, smirking, smiling, along with a shirt he was wearing which had the word killer written on it. His lawyer then whispered to him to basically make a statement and tell him what to say. When TJ then said something you would never imagine after doing this, he basically said, "This hand that unalived your families now pleasures to the memory." I can't show the video of this for obvious reasons and I can't talk too much about it on here, but the full video is on my YouTube, link in my bio. But what this guy did is absolutely horrific, and the fact he then went and did that in court as well, like, what is wrong with people?
So why do these places make you feel that way? These are called liminal spaces. They are literally the threshold between two realities. For example, a rest stop is a place between where you started and where you're going. These places are not meant for you to stay in very long. So you feel a sensation of reality shifting when you stay in those places for longer than you normally would. The same goes for schools during summer break or laundromats at night, and I think you got my point.
How to summon the ceiling man. It is said that if the ceiling man finds you worthy, he'll grant you a wish. If deemed unworthy, he'll curse you with depression and a lot more. To summon the ceiling man, we'll have to get a mirror. The mirror will be need to placed on the floor in an empty room. Make sure you're seeing the reflection of the ceiling in the mirror when placed on the floor. With a lamp or candle, you say the word, "Ceiling man, I am worthy," 20 times. The ceiling man will eventually appear in the mirror. You look into the mirror and you say, "Ceiling man, I am ready for my wish." You wait for a voice that says, "Be careful, if the ceiling man finds you unworthy, your face will look like this in the mirror, disoriented." Should I summon the ceiling man tonight on live?
Does a photo like this make you feel uncomfortable? Or something like this? This phenomenon is known as the uncanny valley. Introduced by Masahiro Mori in the 1970s, the uncanny valley refers to a phenomenon where our brains can register that something is very close to human, but we're also aware that something's not quite right. It's the in-between, where we can process that something looks like a person, but it's not a person, and it causes feelings of distress. Believed to be an evolutionary mechanism, which is also not exclusive to just humans, the uncanny valley is where we perceive these things to be a threat or not of us, and it can cause feelings of panic. One of the most well-known modern examples of this was actually an early test screening of Shrek in 2000, where Fiona was rendered as very hyper-realistic. So realistic that it surpassed the threshold of comfort and cartoon and moved into the uncanny valley. Children actually became so panicked at this screening, they were reported to be crying at the movie anytime she came on the screen. The entire film had to be halted and she was re-rendered. I'm not sure if this was the actual earliest version of Fiona that made it to the screening, but to put this in context, the one that made it to worldwide theaters is right above. But I did happen to find this monster from some of the early test footage of Shrek. The uncanny valley is still a widely unstudied phenomenon, but it continues to become more and more pervasive in entertainment as well as our modern animation.
Am I the only one that actually kind of did not feel uncomfortable looking at all those images? Like, I don't know. It wasn't too crazy. It was like, okay.
Run, run, run. Run, run.
These are 8 horrifying facts that will probably keep you up at night. Being buried alive accidentally occurred so often that people invented safety coffins. In the Middle Ages, people used to eat mummies for medical purposes. It's the main reason we don't have a lot of mummies left today. In the United States, there are more vacant homes than homeless people. Did you know that the actress Glenn Close was raised in a cult? The Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland used to have real skeletons as props. In 1976, a TV crew realized one of the hanging bodies in the Laugh in the Dark ride was indeed a real body by accidentally breaking it. Women in the 18th century used lead as makeup. This is the first chainsaw. It was invented by 2 Scottish doctors. And it was invented for childbirth. Yeah, there's a lot more. like for part 4.
I feel like a chainsaw for childbirth is a little extreme, if I do say so myself.
You might not think it, but this is the deadliest cat on the planet. It's called the African black-footed cat, and it stands at just 8 to 10 inches tall, weighs between 2 and 4 pounds, which is roughly 200 times less than your typical lion. But don't be fooled, because this thing is deadly. It captures more prey in one single night than a leopard does in 6 months. They can walk up to 20 miles a night in search of prey, and have an accelerated metabolism which makes them hunt almost non-stop. For perspective, lions succeed in catching their prey roughly 20 to 25% of the time. This little bastard has a success rate of a whopping 60%. That is the highest hit rate of any wild cat, making it the deadliest on Earth.
The whole time bro saying deadliest cat, I'm thinking they could harm humans. Whole time these people are just hunting like their normal prey. Yo, if it could harm humans though, that would be crazy.
Here's 3 animals you're glad that are extinct. This is the Gigantopithecus, measured to be 10 feet tall, and its teeth were named dragon teeth. The saber-toothed tiger had teeth that could grow over 8 inches, and the tigers themselves could weigh over 400 kilograms. And finally, the megalodon was a monster that roamed the sea. It's known as the biggest fish to ever live, and its diet would consist of dolphins, seals, and whales.
So this man over here decided to transition into a woman so that he can avoid going to a man's prison. If for some reason you don't think this is messed up, I don't know what to tell you. In 2016 and 2019, a 31-year-old Adam Graham, who was first a man, attacked and AR'd 2 women. Adam claimed to have gender issues since the age of 4, but he only started transitioning in 2020 after he was charged. He changed his name from Adam to Isla, and now he's serving time in a women's prison in Scotland. So you're telling me that a man who was charged and found guilty of the RAP of 2 women was put in a facility filled with women? To me, it's just alarming how no one thought that this would be a safety concern for a woman, especially because of what he was charged with. Someone make it make sense.
Every country in the world exports the most of part 1. United States, aircraft. Germany, drugs. Switzerland, blood. Brazil, coffee. China, computers.
Things humans were never meant to see. Okay, firstly, we've all seen alligators poke their head out of water, and it's pretty terrifying when they do this. However, this is what their body looks like underneath the water. And this honestly makes alligators seem a lot less scary. This is what water looks like on fire. How is this even possible? Okay, next, in World War II, the US made inflatable tanks that were used as decoys in the war. This is genius. We were not meant to see this. This man threw boiling water off his balcony, and it instantly turned to snow. And this is a super rare sheepfish. It's a snail that has the head of a sheep and the body of a plant.
Can you imagine entering a home for a showing and finding the homeowners dead? Well, that's exactly what happened to billionaire Honey and Barry Sherman. This December is going to be 7 years since their gruesome unaliving, and police still don't have any idea who did this. What's crazy is that they were found by their realtor with their clients inside their Toronto mansion with their necks tied with belts beside their pool. Barry Sherman was the founder of Apotex, one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. The way Barry and his wife exited this world was very cruel, and a lot of people actually think that their son had something to do with this. There's a handful of suspicious people in this case, but many think that it was their son because this person was very close to them and knew the ins and outs of their mansion very, very well. Their kids actually inherited around $3 billion each, which is crazy. I feel like this case has not been talked about the way it should be, and considering how much they did for the community and all the donations they've contributed to is wild. Since this case has been open for several years and there's been no new evidence or suspects, people think that the government has something to do with their deaths. And not to mention, their mansion, aka the crime scene, was demolished immediately at the request of their own kids. That's not suspicious at all. Also, this case happened 10 minutes from where I live, so that's crazy. But if you guys want to check it out and learn more about this case and the new details and the new updates, make sure to check out my video on my YouTube channel.
Probably this. This is 51. Look, so this is 50. This is it. And yeah, nobody knows, but it's for sale. Look.
This is a creepy story about Help Me. A teenage girl named Kathy was babysitting 2 kids. There was a 7-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl. Their parents went out to see a movie and they wouldn't be home till late. Around 9 o'clock that night, The phone rang. Kathy answered the phone and heard a creepy voice saying, "Help me, for heaven's sake, help me." She immediately hung up and thought it was a prank. Then 30 minutes later, the phone rang again with the same voice saying, "Help me, somebody please help me." This time Kathy got scared. The children asked who it was, but she told them not to worry, it was fine. Another 30 minutes went by, and the phone rang one more time. The voice sounded scared and desperate this time, saying, "Help me, for heaven's sake, will somebody help me?" Then the phone went dead. Then seconds later, there was a knock at the front door, and she heard the same voice saying, help me," over and over again. Kathy says she's gonna let him in because he needs help. When the parents arrived home that night, they went into the house. Kathy and their children were laying dead in the living room with all their arms and legs cut off.
It's always so sad when you try to help someone and just for you to get the downside of helping them. It's always annoying when that happens. Like, that's an extreme situation, but there's been situations where people will help other people and there's always something bad that happens to the person that's doing the helping. And it's just like, bro, you needed my help and now I'm the one that's getting the repercussions for this. Like, come on.
Facts that sound fake but are actually true, part 1. You can actually live the rest of your life without any food. France was still executing people with a guillotine when the first Star Wars movie came out. There are more trees on Earth than there are stars in our galaxy. Shakespeare invented the name Jessica. In Jupiter, it rains diamonds. I have to move to Jupiter right now.
Random facts that will blow your mind, part 17. New York was once called New Amsterdam. The word goodbye came from God be with you. Mexico has the most external debt worldwide. Recycling a 3-foot stack of newspaper can save 1 tree.
Urban legends you wish you never knew, part 3. The Catman. This isn't as innocent as it sounds. This urban legend comes from a small suburb in Norway. Legend has it that in the nearest forest, the Catman lived by himself in a hut that he built himself. You'd know if you got close to his hut because he had placed dead cats on stakes all around his area. Some of the cats you would even see pinned on the trees. He supposedly snuck into neighborhoods of the nearby towns between 2 or 3 in the morning, and he would hunt down cats, strip their and sell their skin, and he would keep some of the cats to decorate his place. It is said that if you met him you would instantly freeze from a feeling of impending doom and go insane, because after he no longer had human eyes, but instead cat eyes. Needless to say, there were several aborted missions to locate his hut in the woods, but when people get to the edge of his field, that makes them wanna puke from fear, and they run away.
Here are some events that will happen by the year 2050. The sad truth is, by the year 2050, half of the world's population will not have access to clean drinking water. Half of the Amazon rainforest will be deforested, leaving many animals without any shelter at all. In 2025, SpaceX is sending their first cargo ship to Mars, and if all goes well, they are sending their first humans to Mars by the year 2050. So who knows, maybe by 2050 we will have the first civilization on Mars. Animals are getting more dangerous and more powerful every year. Animals are evolving every day, becoming more of a threat to society. I'm not talking about your regular house pet, I'm talking about wild animals. For instance, in 2020, we found the first flying spider, your worst nightmare. You thought the well, by 2050, there could be more deadly viruses affecting the world than ever before. You better keep that face mask. The population will be 9.6 billion.
All digital data in the world will get deleted in 2033, and this guy from the year 2062 just told us how. Yes, he claims to be a time traveler. They even connected him to a lie detector, and it all checked out as true. So Spotify reached out to sponsor this video to let us get to the bottom of this. His name is Peter Reuter, who says in November of 2022, patient 0 of a deadly virus started infection at JFK Airport. And in October 2023, a new variant of the virus known as Pegasus was spread to infect the entire world. Dr. Eliza Knight was assigned to Peter's case, who tells her the end of the world is closer than we think. According to him, kids being born now will be known as the IP, or interpandemic generation, who will grow up glued to a screen and fearing social contact. In 2031, we finally establish our first colony on Mars, but that's nothing compared to the discovery we make there 11 years later. On March 30th, 2033, the world will experience the Great Deletion, in which an AI tasked with cleaning up junk files ends up deleting literally everything. Just imagine waking up one day with no email, no social media, your entire digital footprint is completely erased. Then, in August 2042, that colony on Mars uncovers an ancient city buried under the Martian surface, which apparently teaches us how to time travel. Ultimately, October 2053 is when the entire world crumbles for good. But then, the unexpected happens. Dr. Knight wakes up in the year 2012, where she's now the patient, and a familiar doctor is interviewing her about her mental health, which is the plot of Case 63, a Spotify original audio series which is oddly close to reality. Season 2 just dropped, so you can binge both seasons now and maybe even predict what's going to happen in our future.
For a second, I thought he was actually talking about our reality. I'm like, bro, there is no way by 2030, whatever the hell, we have a civilization on Mars. We're not even close to that. So it's like, that's a lie. And the fact that he said we time traveled in the past, is actually super hard to time travel to the past than to the future. So that one's a little bit sus, but I think he was saying just like a podcast episode or something like that.
3 disturbing movies you've probably never seen. This first movie is insane. It's called Flowers in the Attic, and it's about 4 siblings after their father passes away. Their mom takes them to their grandma's mansion, but things quickly go wrong because their grandma locks them in the attic and won't let them leave. Eventually, they also find out their mom is hiding a terrifying secret, and because the 4 of them are growing up without ever seeing anyone else, the relationship between the siblings starts to get unusual. Next, this movie has an insane plot twist. The autopsy of Jane Doe. The body of an unknown woman is found and the coroner and his son have to autopsy it. But soon they realize this woman is not normal. Basically, her internal organs are all messed up, but on the outside she looks fine. Then they find these strange symbols written inside her body. You'll never guess the plot twist. Last up, we have May. May is an outcast and the only friend she has is a doll named Susie. But one day this doll breaks and that leads her to do some pretty crazy things, because now she's determined to make herself a new friend. Follow for more.
Phone numbers you should never call, part 7. This is the first phone number. It belonged to the Derry Police Department. When you call this number, a policeman will reply and tell you about some kids that went missing, but then Pennywise kills him and leaves you a disturbing message. This is the second phone number. When you call this number, a young woman will reply and with a desperate voice will cry, "Mommy, I'm going to die. I'm at the club. You need to come and get me." We don't know where it comes from, but it is said that this woman was kidnapped and killed by an unknown murderer.
The most historic case that has ever taken place in DC history is probably one that you have never even heard of. One of the scariest cases that I've read in a long time. This is the very true story of the Freeway Phantom. Now, in the 1970s, there was a man in Washington, D.C. who people named the Freeway Phantom because he had one very specific MO. He was only going after young black girls and women. He was abducting them off the street and then their bodies would be found here, left and positioned right at the freeway. Actually, in the investigation, they profiled him as someone who was a textbook psychopath. He was repeatedly calling the families after he had abducted these girls, and he was breathing into the phone, and then he would say something like, "I just killed your daughter," and then hang up. Even left a handwritten note with the body of one of his victims. If you want the full story on this, we are going to cover it on the show. Mysteriously, in the 90s, all the records on the case vanished.
That's so disgusting. Imagine like it was actually someone's daughter that died. Oh my gosh, I would crash out.
These are the creepiest unsolved photo mysteries. The Baltic Sea anomaly is known for being one of the most famous underwater mysteries on Earth. This sonar image from 2011 shows a large structure located at the bottom of the ocean. And if you're a Star Wars fan, it may look a little familiar to you. Many people believe that it could be a sunken UFO, or an ancient man-made structure that was lost to history. That, or Han Solo decided to move there and live his life in peace. Next, in 2016, a woman named Linda sent Belfast Live a disturbing photo that was taken from the year 1990. The photo shows a group of women in a factory with their arms crossed. One of these women was Linda's grandmother, Ellen Donnelly, and if you look closely at her shoulder, you can see a disembodied hand hovering over her. The photo quickly spread through the media, even making it to Snopes, where they were unable to debunk it, so always look over your shoulder. And finally, many people believe that the Madonna, or the White Lady, was caught on camera back in 1991 at the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. On this night, Judy Huff Fells decided to take a stroll in one of the most haunted cemeteries in America, along with the local Ghost Research Society, when they felt an odd presence nearby. And when she took out her infrared camera and snapped a photo, she could see a woman sitting on a stone. And this is why you shouldn't wander around a cemetery at night.
Chilling last photos of people before they went missing, part 1. Lars Mittank.
Ozmitenk was a German backpacker travelling in Bulgaria in July 2014. While there, he supposedly took part in an altercation that resulted in a busted eardrum. His family and friends were worried after receiving cryptic texts from him saying he was being followed by 4 men. This image right here is from security camera footage which shows Lars sprinting out of the airport without his luggage. And the chilling last photo before he went missing is this one right here. After supposedly hopping a fence and running into the woods, Lars has not been seen since.
Welcome to Creep Time on TikTok with Silas Dean. Today we are covering the disappearance of Maura Murray. Maura is a 21-year-old college student studying nursing in Massachusetts in the year 2004. On February 9th, she sends an email to school letting them know she'll be gone for a week due to a family death. But no one in her family had died. Records that were obtained from her computer would show an earlier search on MapQuest for directions to Burlington, Vermont. At 3:40 p.m. on the same day, she would withdraw all of her money from a local ATM. At around 4 or 5 p.m., she takes off on this trip, having told no one, and just starts traveling up Interstate 91 North. Around 7:27 p.m., Maura's car is crashed on a sharp, snowy turn along Route 112 in New Hampshire, and a neighbor would call the police. Another driver who's returning home also passes her and offers to call for help. She pleads with him not to and insists that she's already called AAA, but phone records would later show that she never called AAA that night. The man carries on home, but decides to call 911 anyway. Between 7:27 and the police arriving at 7:46, Maura is gone. The car is found completely abandoned, and she's taken her cell phone and her credit cards, none of which have ever shown a record of being used since that night. That driver would be the last verified sighting of Maura. A witness would later come forward to report seeing a young person dressed in dark clothing traveling very quickly by foot around 8:30 p.m., roughly 4 to 5 miles up Route 112 on the same night. But it was never confirmed if this was Maura. It's been over 17 years since the disappearance, and the case has never been solved.
That's such a weird case because it's like, why did she need to do all that? Like, why did she need to drive that far? Why did she need to drive in the snow? Why did she need to lie and tell her professor that she is not coming in because of a death in her family when that didn't even happen? Why did she deny help from other people? Like, you know, it's one of those cases where you kind of just have to think, like, why?
These are some dirty history facts that I guarantee you were never taught. And if you ever told your history teacher any of these, they'd definitely go, excuse me, what the fuck? The first toy was invented by Cleopatra. However, to actually make it work, she put angry bees inside of it. You know, so they would go... I can't lie, don't think that would pass Dragon's Den. Next up, the ancient Romans used stale urine as mouthwash. Cool, but why? We actually know that Benjamin Franklin had a MILF fetish. A letter that he wrote back in the day was actually found and confirmed this. However, the detail he went into within this letter, we're not gonna go there. There is a sign in Pompeii next to the fountain that translates to "please don't shit in the fountain." All I can think is, how many times did that have to happen for a sign to become necessary? And finally, cornflakes were invented to stop what rhymes with fastitation. It was believed that doing this to yourself was a big no-no. They thought stale foods helped fight this urge. Thus, cornflakes. Anywho.
3 disturbing movies on Netflix you need to watch. This first movie is insane. It's called Secret Obsession, and it's about a woman named Jennifer who gets in a car accident and loses all her memories. In the hospital, a man shows up claiming that he's her husband. But as soon as they go home, Jennifer realizes something is wrong. Because at night, all the doors are locked so she can't leave. And the pictures of them together are photoshopped. So who's this man pretending to be her husband? And what really happened to her? Next up, there's no other movie like this. It's called Annihilation. Lena is a biologist who joins a secret mission into an area called the Shimmer. A mysterious place that mutates the DNA of everything inside it. Everyone who's ever went in there disappeared, except her husband, who went missing for a year then randomly showed up. But something is wrong with him, and Lena is determined to go into the Shimmer herself and find out the truth. Last up, we have Apostle. This is about a man who finds out his sister is being held hostage at a religious cult. So he goes to the island where the cult is to try to rescue her, but he would never expect what he would find there. Follow for more.
I personally kind of interested in the first two. Like, what did she say? Secret Obsession and Annihilation. Like, those two are actually pretty, those are good concepts for a movie, I'm not gonna lie. If you guys have ever watched those, like all 3 of those movies, or just at least 1 out of the 3, let me know how they are in the comments, because I might check them out.
Did you know the dark truth behind The Wizard of Oz? The original actor who played the Tin Man had to quit filming after only 10 days because he was dying from aluminum poisoning. The makeup they were using for the Tin Man was actually real aluminum, which absorbed through his skin and into his lungs. He then suffered with respiratory problems for the rest of his life. During the poppy field scene, the falling snow looks beautiful, but in reality, the cast was actually being dusted and poisoned. The snow that was used in this scene was actually asbestos, a known carcinogen. The line costume costume that the Cowardly Lion wears was made out of a real lion hide, which was so hot and heavy that he would often faint from the heat. In this scene, the Wicked Witch of the West was supposed to disappear into a trapdoor underneath the set as flames shot up from beneath. When the flames erupted too soon, the actress's hat and broom caught on fire. She suffered second and third degree burns all over her body and spent 6 weeks in the hospital. The filming process was a nightmare for Judy Garland, who played Dorothy. They required her to lose 12 pounds on a diet that consisted of pills and very little food. And studio executives would refer to her as the fat little pig with pigtails behind her back. And she was also given adrenaline shots so that she could stay awake, sometimes up to 72 hours in a row. And the actor who played the Scarecrow was left with permanent scars all over his face from the makeup and prosthetics he had to wear. And finally, the dog Toto actually made more money daily than the Munchkin actors made for the entire movie.
From the sound of it, it looked like it wasn't even really worth the cast member's time. He said every single cast member had a different problem. One had to suffer, one had to take adrenaline shots, one had to breathe in asparagis or whatever the hell that shit is. One had to freaking wear a metal tin suit, absorbing into his lungs, creating lung disease. One was passing out, one caught on fire. What? I wonder if they're all still alive today.
Whatever you do, do not look into the most disturbing case in history. Back in 2014, 2 young girls went hiking in Panama. Now, they were right out in the wilderness, camping, hiking up these big mountains. I mean, I don't know why you go to Panama to do that, but they never returned back. These right here are the last photos that were taken of the pair. As you can see in all of the photos, the pair appeared to be having a nice time, taking some normal photos as you would. But then it cut out. Nothing. Radio silence for, well, an entire week. 7 days later, between 1 AM and 4 AM, take a look. These photos found on the pair's phone just containing very weird, abstract photos, weird stuff. But then it got worse. When authorities were searching through the photos, they found a photo of Lizanne, who was one of the girls. And in this photo, someone was holding her head, and there was blood in her hair. Now, what does this mean? We don't really know. 2 months later, they discovered something else. They discovered a pelvis and a foot, and after extensive tests, they discovered that the DNA on here matched that of the girls. So they went from having a nice time, taking great photos, to these extremely disturbing photos that no one knows what they are, to being unalived clearly, but still the full story remains completely unknown. What the hell happened?
Deadliest computer viruses in the world, part 4. This one is called horrorbob.exe, and yes, it's exactly what you think it is. So don't watch this if you get scared easily. So let's open this thing up and we get the usual dialog box. This Trojan is no joke. Do you want to run it? That's what we do out here. First things first, computer restarts. Nothing new here. On boot up, we get stage 1. Background changes to this dripping blood, and this ain't even the tip of the iceberg. Wait a few seconds and you get stage 2. You guessed it. This creepy, crusty SpongeBob window opens up, and it says, SpongeBob is watching you. And also this other pop-up box over here. Let's see what it says. Your Windows has been infected by SpongeBob Horror Trojan 2.0. You cannot delete this Trojan, but you have 2 minutes to use your system. After 2 minutes, your PC will crash with an RSOD, which is a red screen of death. Below that, you got the rules. Pause if you want to read them. Alright, this is where the fun begins. Stage 3. Windows Media Player opens, playing this creepy background music called Cling Clang. Just listen to this. Then we get stage 4. Inverted colors start flashing as the music continues. Moving your mouse causes this glitch effect, which leads to stage 5. Screen starts to melt. Yeah, this is some nightmare fuel right here. Oh, another pop-up. Now you have 1 last minute to use your system. Okay, SpongeBob really ain't messing around, huh? Stage 6, screen shrinks like you're getting hypnotized in Get Out. Keeps getting smaller and smaller until SpongeBob pops back out to the front again. You can move the window around, but it won't get you far. Strap in, because you're in for a ride. Stage 6.5, screen just melts again for a bit. Oh, then we're hit with our final warning. Last 5 seconds to use your system. Okay, Sponge, let's see what you got. It has come. Time over. SpongeBob will now crash your PC forever. Okay. Behold stage 7. Screen fills up with a million red X's as the music fades away. And finally, reboot. Computer restarts and we're met with a red screen of death, which doesn't even exist on Windows. No matter how many times you reboot now, this is all you'll ever see. Your PC ran into a problem that it couldn't handle and now it needs to restart. Stop code SpongeBob is watching you? Never heard of that one before. Game, set, match. This computer is dust for life, and yeah, I'm definitely going to be checking my closet before I sleep now.
As soon as I hear the music and as soon as I lose control of my laptop, I'm just chucking it through the window. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm just like, alright, fuck this shit.
This is a true horrifying story of the tomb of Tutankhamun. I spoke about black magic in many of my episodes. I revealed the terror and the dangers behind its rituals, such as the books Al-Ghazali and Shams al-Ma'arif, the cursed houses, the buried spells, and a lot more. However, the age of when black magic was the biggest, the strongest, and the most dangerous was the age of the pharaohs in ancient Egypt. Black magic back then was nothing compared to what it is today. Allahu A'lam, but from the stories I've heard, I even believe that the jinns were a lot more powerful than what they are today. In Surah Taha, a chapter in the Quran, it talked about black magic and how it was so strange. Black magicians would use jinns to deceive people. They used to throw their ropes on the ground and they would move like snakes. All of these things were made by jinns back in the day of Prophet Musa. Many jinns used to worship these kings and they would provide most of their energies to execute their demands. Tutankhamun is the last of them. He was the last pharaoh of the royal family at the end of the 18th dynasty. These kings were worshipped by jinns, and when they died, their tombs were still protected by jinns. Many people have died trying to open their tombs years after their death. And the reason behind it is these tombs are guarded by black magic. If you go near an untouched tomb from ancient Egypt, you will most probably die before cracking it open. During the grand opening of Tutankhamun's tomb, 13 people have died soon after the ceremony. The archaeologist Howard Carter was the lucky one that opened his tomb. But of course, he died as well a few years after that. Now, Tutankhamun died more than 3,000 years ago. A lot of people try to open that tomb is because it carried a lot of treasure. The tomb itself was made of gold, and we have reports of people that died only from the 20th century from opening this tomb. But just imagine how many people have died trying to open this tomb throughout these 3,000 years. That's how strong the curse is. The jinns have protected his grave for thousands of years.
Thousands of years is crazy. Like, just let it go at that point. But I'm pretty sure I remember them saying he had like a lot of like treasures in there. So they probably put a good protection on that one.
Strangest places in the world, part 1. Firstly, on top of a hill in Pennsylvania, some stones can be found that shouldn't actually be there, because there's no nearby high terrain where they could have originated. These are called the ringing rocks, because whenever something hits these stones, they make a strange ringing noise. Next is the petrifying well in England, where water flows from a rock and turns whatever it touches into stone. As you can see, people often leave items like hats, teddy bears, or even bicycles, which appear to have already been turned into stone. Some people believe there's a mystical power, but the scientific reason behind this is the unusually high mineral content in the water, which forms a hard mineral shell on any object it comes into contact with. And within a few months, everything essentially becomes a stone statue.
The one where he was talking about hitting the rock, you can honestly use that like a school bell. It sounded exactly like a bell to me.
Crazy things happening in the world right now that you probably didn't know about. First up, a brain chip was implanted into a paralyzed man, which allowed him to send out tweets with just his mind. This tweet was written by 62-year-old Philip O'Keefe by just thinking it. Next, NASA might know something that we don't, because apparently they hired religious scholars to prepare humanity for alien contact. And turns out we're not done with the virus because the first cases of flu Rona was found. But believe it or not, there's even more. There might be a whole new pandemic in 2022 called the bird flu. But let's end on a more positive note. 2 inventors in Kenya created the first ever bio-robotic arm that's controlled by only brain signals. It was mainly invented to help disabled people with everyday tasks. Follow for more.
This 5-year-old girl is the youngest mother in history. This is Lena Medina, and she was born on September 23rd of 1933 in Peru. Her father worked as a silversmith, and her mother stayed at home taking care of Lena and her 8 siblings. At the age of 5, Lena's parents noticed that her stomach started to grow strangely. They decided to seek medical help, and they were convinced that their daughter was suffering from some kind of illness. Lena's parents suspected that her abdomen was changing due to a tumor growing in her abdomen. Lena had an examination done, and the doctors told her parents that not to worry, she didn't have any kind of illness, and the reason why her stomach was growing so strangely was because Their 5-year-old daughter was pregnant. 7 months pregnant, to be exact. Lena's doctor was running tests to see how a 5-year-old girl could be pregnant, and he discovered that she was suffering from a very rare disease called premature puberty. Many girls begin puberty around 11 to 12 years old, but for Lena's case, she started her puberty around 2.5 to 3 years old. She started to grow breasts at the age of 4, and her pelvis had expanded by the age of 5. This rare condition can also happen in boys. They will have an enlarged private area, a deeper voice, and even a beard. The public and the doctors were completely shocked by this case, and fortunately, the birth went well. Meanwhile, an intensive investigation was going on to see who could be the father of this child. Lena never discussed who S8'd her and under what circumstances. The shadow of suspicion fell on Lena's father. He was arrested and was later released. There was never a single piece of evidence that Lena's father did this to her, and he always denied it. To this day, no one knows the father of Lena's child, and she refuses to do interviews about it, so we may never know the whole truth.
Nah, in my head it was like, oh, she just got pregnant. But then 2 and 2 hit that I'm just like, someone had to get her pregnant. I was like, who's getting a 5-year-old That story was intense, man. That's strange.
So there's a specific place where hell is on earth. In the Bible, Jesus said, one of my disciples named Antipas would die and be martyred, right? Now, Saint Antipas was martyred and he was killed in, you know that torture bowl? So they put somebody in like a metal bowl and like boil them alive. Yeah, that happened in Geneva, Switzerland. People are saying Geneva, Switzerland is the literal place of hell. It's literally the portal to hell, or that's at least where the devil resides, because that's what it says in the Bible. Now check this out. Do you know what else is in Geneva, Switzerland? What? CERN. Oh. CERN headquarters is in Geneva, Switzerland, and the CERN logo is what? Six, fam. CERN is working on particle generation and messing with matter of the universe to tear our dimension with the supernatural and the natural, fam. So what if theory? They're trying to open the portal to hell, bro.
I know I have fans all over the world, but if you're from Switzerland, is that true that Geneva, Switzerland is known as the real world hell? Because I was like, I feel like Switzerland's a nice place. When he also said 666, that also reminded me of when I posted on my community tab and I was like, yo, what's going on, guys? And y'all were like, oh my God, he's the devil. He's doing the 666. Bro, I was just chilling with throwing my hands up. Like, I was not doing no 666. But like when I looked at it and someone said that, I was like, I could see how they could see it like that. But it really was not like that. Like, trust me. I'm not working for no Illuminati or none of that.
Here's the truth behind the Grinch. So we all know the Grinch absolutely despises Christmas. However, at the end of the movie, his heart grows 3 sizes and he loves Christmas once again. But this story continues longer than you think. Now, it's quite obvious the Grinch isn't exactly right in the head. But during a scene in the movie, the Grinch seriously injures his head. This injury took a toll on him as he grew older and eventually he lost his memory. After him and his dog died, they were given a new life in a realm called Halloween Town, where they now lived as Jack Zellington and Zira. He would later re-spark his love for Christmas, just like he did when he was alive. Both eventually wear a Santa suit, both deliver presents, and both have a dog companion. This means the Grinch and The Night Before Christmas are tied together.
Surprising facts about religion. Christianity is the most popular religion worldwide. Hinduism is supposedly the oldest religion worldwide. China is the most atheist country in the world. Around 1.2 billion people do not follow any religion. Somalia is ranked as the most religious country.
Just rang your doorbell because I have a couple questions for you. Are you sure? Are you positive? Are you sure? I just have a couple questions for you. Are you sure? Are you positive? I just have a couple questions for you. Are you sure? Are you positive? Are you sure? Are you absolutely certain?
My anxiety would be through the roof if this ever happened to me. This man was trying to enter this woman's home after he saw her inside her kitchen through an open window. And then he walked up to the door, which you see in this video, and told her that he wanted to R her and take her life. Police found him the next day. He identified himself as the Holy Spirit, and then he was arrested.
Audacity of that guy. Yo, Shorty said, nah, I'm good. And he goes, are you sure? Are you positive? Like, bro, she said she's good. And you're talking about what? R-ing her and K-ing her? No one's gonna be like, yeah, bro, come on in. What? I think he was under the influence of something. Trust me. No one's acting like that normally.
This is the disturbing truth about Disney World. In the Haunted Mansion at Disney theme parks, people who go on the ride commit suicide during the course of the ride and become a ghost. At the beginning of the ride, the ghost narrator says, the only way to escape the mansion is to die. And he then shows that he hangs himself. Near the end of the ride, there's a moment when the ride's vehicle turns around backwards and you go off a balcony, which represents you jumping to your death. Before that part of the ride, all of the ghosts are trying to scare you, but afterwards they sing excitedly and invite you to party with them, technically meaning that you're dead. This is a super disturbing ride, and it's crazy to think that this ride is at Disney.
So this is disturbing and will blow your mind. Did you know that it wasn't illegal to own CP or CSAM in Japan until the year 2014? That's right, until the year 2014, anybody could own CP or CSAM in Japan with no legal consequences. I find that really hard to believe, but it is true. Look it up. And did you also know that Japan just raised the age of consent last year from 13 to 16? Now, these are definitely steps in the right direction, not the adequate steps, I would imagine. But something really disturbing is that there's no law in place in Japan to prevent people from drawing CP, CSAM, and selling it. A recent study that was done showed that 30 to 40% of manga comics in Japan contain sexual undertones with characters that are underage. And like I just said, this could be like a joke or it could be full-on graphic drawn content. And there are no laws making that illegal in Japan. I mean, I find that incredibly hard to believe. Here in America, you would be put in prison for a long time for having something like that in your possession. But in Japan, it is still completely legal and it hasn't been outlawed. Now, I don't understand why they waited till 2014 to finally pass a law that would put pedophiles in prison. But as you can imagine, the sentences that these people are getting over there are literally nothing. Like, I've read stories of people that were found with hundreds, thousands of images and videos on their computers and hard drives, and they were sentenced to probation, asked to pay like a $500 fee. But this is a major issue, and I felt like people should know about that because when I read that, I was just disturbed. If you want to join me on my journey to expose pedophiles and pedophile rings, listen to my podcast, The Conspiracy Files, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can subscribe to my channel. And let me tell you, this video, you should watch this. It is very enlightening.
That's funny that he talked about the manga. I was literally just about to say that. I was like, every time I watch anime, they always just have like undertones of underage girls being very, what's the word I'm looking for? You know the word I'm saying. Like, they have, like, every time you watch anime, you kind of, you know what I'm saying? You'll see some underage girls with like, I'm like, what the heck?
You're probably on your phone too much, so here are some stats. So the Philippines consistently ranks the highest in screen time with an average of 10 hours per day, with Brazil and Thailand coming in second and third right afterwards with about 9, and Japan is the lowest with about 4.5. Men generally spend 10% more time online than women, likely due to men's interest in gaming, which adds that additional percent, though women consistently spend more time on social media and online retailers. 90% of screen time is spent on a mobile phone for the younger generations, though for millennials and greater, TV becomes disproportionately more prevalent. Generationally, 13 to 18-year-olds spend the most time on phones at 7.5 hours per day, with 18 to 24-year-olds spending 6.5 hours, and under 13-year-olds spending 5 hours. The silent generation predictably has the lowest at 2 hours and 30 minutes. Screen time has doubled in just the last 15 years and has gone up 75% since the pandemic. 50% of infants are even using their phones, and 50% of people reportedly wake up in the middle of the night to check their phones. And finally, most people pick up their phones an average of 200 times per day. So maybe put it down.
Yeah, I'll be the type to wake up in the middle of the night and check my phone. It's crazy because like throughout the whole day I do check my phone, but I'm usually never on it too much. With these addicting apps like TikTok, I know some of you guys don't use Snapchat, but trust me, if you use Snapchat and you have a lot of people, Snapchat could also be addictive. Instagram with their reels now, YouTube obviously. Like with all these like really addictive apps, people are like 75 times more likely to be on their phone like all day, like almost all day pretty much. Mostly if they're hooked to TikTok. TikTok will have people on their phone for 3 hours straight, not even realizing 3 hours have passed.
Videos that cannot be explained.
You hear that?
All done? All right, Jake, you going to bed now? All right. Got this nice bottle of boiling water to keep my sleeping bag warm, but I'm not quite ready to go to bed, so just gonna put it right there. On that note, I think I'm gonna get my bed set up. Always try to put something in between the stove and my sleeping bag in case I roll around in the night. I don't want that sleeping bag even touching that stove. It'll melt a hole, or worse yet, catch on fire. Go sleep and I'll see you guys in the morning.
Creepy last words people said right before dying. Registered nurse Shirley Smith said that she had a very rich patient who was a true Satanist that was dying of cancer. The patient had upside-down crosses and a Satan's Bible by her bedside. Shirley said that she will never forget what happened. It was the middle of the summer, and yet it was so cold and dark in her room that you couldn't even stand it, even in the middle of the day. She said that it got so evil feeling in there that she had to call a priest to pray with her and her aides before they would even enter the room. When the patient passed away, she had not spoken in over 24 hours. And then all of a sudden, she sat straight up and said, "Satan, take me." And then she fell back on the bed. Shirley said that after she passed, the room got bright and extremely warm. Shockingly, when they moved the patient's body, they had to get rid of the mattress because where her body had been, it looked burnt. And the most horrible smell was emanating from the mattress cover. Needless to say, Shirley went to confession immediately because she did not want an evil spirit around her. The nurse said that one of their patients had a serious recurrence and had to be admitted. Over the course of several nights, he had become quite upset during rounds. He kept asking for his wallet, saying that he had to pay the ferryman. The medical student on rotation in the department took a quarter out of his pocket and put it in the patient's hand. The patient then dropped the coin into the cup on his bedstand and calmed down. Later that night, he passed away quietly. The nurse asked what happened. The medical student, who remembered his Greek mythology, said that the patient had to pay Charon, the ferryman, to be taken across the river Styx. A nurse said that he was doing rounds at a hospital. There was one two-patient room, and one of the patients was a very loud and confused woman who could be quite a handful. On this particular night, she had a roommate who had passed away shortly before the nurse entered the room. She was DNR, so there was no code blue. When he entered the room, he noticed that the elderly lady, who was usually very loud and confused, was sitting quietly with her hands crossed neatly upon her lap. Something was different, and there was this look of serenity on her face. She asked him in a voice that seemed much younger and clearer than before, "Did you see them, young man? They're so beautiful." He said, "No, ma'am, there's no one else here." She said, "They're right next to you, talking to Mrs. Banneker. The angels. They're so beautiful." He said that he instantly felt every hair of his body stand up, and an electric tingle course up and down his spine. "They're not here for me this time," she said sadly.
Yeah, we've actually seen some of those stories in our last videos, but with the last ones, like I'm saying, when people are about to die, they hallucinate a little bit, like they'll see or hear things that are not there. So that's what I think personally happened for that last story. But we already looked at those, so let's just keep going.
Is the true story of the Tooth Fairy. In the 1950s, there was a woman named Tess Tickle, who was a dentist in Ohio. One day after work, she had discovered her husband having an affair with their neighbor. But before I continue, I advise you to check if your phone is being spied on. Save this video, click here, then here, and if you see this, delete it immediately. Now Tess was angry and heartbroken, but she didn't react. She just told him to pack his bags and leave. Around 7 months later, her husband knocked on the door, begging and asking her to fix his toothache. You see, he didn't have good insurance, and he knew that she used to fix his cavities for free. That's when Tess looked at him and smiled. She said, "Sure, meet me in my office tomorrow night." The next night, she put him under anesthesia. When her ex-husband finally woke up, he realized all his teeth were gone, and Tess was no longer there to be found. The next couple of years, men and women who are unloyal to their partners started reporting waking up to a dark figure who puts them to sleep and steals all their teeth. When police started to investigate, it led them to a cave in the forest. Then they saw something disturbing. Type part 2 if you want to hear what happens next.
The scariest sounds in space are 100% real. A while back, NASA posted some audio clips on their official website of real sounds captured from objects in space. Now that should be impossible, right? There's no sound in space, so NASA's clearly a phony agency that fakes everything. Okay, relax. As much as I love the tinfoil hat stuff, NASA actually has something called an electromagnetic acoustic transducer, a device that can convert electromagnetic waves and other vibrations emitted by objects and map them to audio waves that we can hear. Pretty much everything is just a wave. Light, sound, electricity, radio, ultrasonic, the only difference being the length of each wave. Some wavelengths we can detect with our eyes, like the visible light spectrum, and others with our ears, like sound, and still others that we humans can't even detect at all. This gadget takes those waves and maps them to the audio wavelength range that we can hear. As it happens, some electromagnetic waves in space even occur within our audio frequency range, and we can listen to those directly using this device. Well, from those readings, these have been rated among the scariest sounds in space that NASA has ever recorded. That just sounds like a howling breeze in the middle of winter to me. This one makes sense to me. A pulsar is a rapidly rotating dead star. I could imagine one would sound like that. As weird as it is to say, that's exactly what I'd imagine the Milky Way galaxy to sound like. Bro, what? Nah, bro, that's fake, that's fake. This one I'm calling cap on. There's no way. Nah. This one ain't real. That ain't real. A little scarier, but this one sounds more real to me. Okay. A little creepier. Sounds like there's something going on over there. The moon. Now that right there, that's a black hole. Yeah, that's definitely not a place I want to be. Oh, well, looks like that's it. Let me know if you think these sounds are real or not.
Yeah, like he said, put your thoughts about those sounds in the comments. In my opinion, I feel like all of them were pretty accurate, except for the supernova. The supernova sound like an angel or like a tooth fairy just came out of nowhere and was like, "Hey, how you doing?" Was trying to bless you, and you know what I'm saying? Like, do you guys get that same vibe from that? Because I was like, that supernova one kind of seems a little bit too majestic, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Things humans weren't meant to see. A man traveled to Egypt and placed a remote-controlled car inside one of the pyramids. The original poster claimed to have found something the government would want to keep a secret. He also wanted to be paid $5 million for the rest of the footage to be revealed, but it never did. As it gets deeper, it shows what appears to be a tall figure inside the chambers.
Didn't they say people used to raid those pyramids? Like, I swear to God, they used to say people used to raid the pyramids and all that shit. So that could just be someone raiding the pyramid. I like how horrible the quality is, though. Like, bro, you go inside a pyramid, at least put on, like, a GoPro or something that actually has good quality. The quality that was so horrible. It was like, bro, that could be fake. That could be real. For all I know, it could be freaking AI generated, you know?
Oh my god. Me and a bunch of my friends at Fantastic Fest got to see the premiere of Terrifier 3. And not only did I get to see the movie and meet the freaking cast and director of Terrifier 3, I was sincerely blown away. Look, it's no surprise I've been immensely hyped for this movie. And also went into the theater being a big fan of the Terrifier series and wanting to have a good time. But I was not expecting to sincerely really like this as a movie. Because bottom line, this is the best out of the entire Terrifier franchise. Because not only does it dial up the intense scenes with art and the gore to an 11, but it actually has plot and moments with our characters. Now, of course, there's the big question that a lot of people want to know. Is there a moment in the movie that beats the hacksaw scene from Terrifier 1? Is there a moment in Terrifier 3 that beats the room scene in Terrifier 2? And my answer is weird, but that kind of depends upon you. There are some moments in this movie, especially the first 10 minutes, where the specific moment may not be as heavily gory intense as the hacksaw or the bedroom, but the weight of what Art is doing to who he's doing it to is where it gets really intense. Like, they basically took Art from Terrifier 1 and put him in the same tone of movie like Terrifier 2. Yeah, mean, scary Art is back, and he's more brutal than ever. And I think for mainstream audiences, that's going to be the biggest turnoff. But as fans of the Terrifier series, I was laughing through the entire thing. Maybe I'm just messed up. Maybe I'm absolutely sick. But just Damien Leone has just an amazing showcase of some messed up gore. Like, the chainsaw scene in particular, talk about moments before disaster. So I'll say this, I absolutely think this is the better of the three films, especially when it comes to just the overall movie aspect of it. The runtime, the editing, the pacing, 1,000 times better. This movie is definitely not going to be for everybody. But if you go in expecting and knowing the tone of the Terrifier films and what Damien Leone is trying to accomplish with them, I think you're really going to love it.
I've watched a couple of the Terrifier movies and they're very gory. I don't know if you guys like them, but if you guys do, let me know your thoughts about them in the comments. But if you've never watched them and you really want to check it out, just know there's a lot of gore.
If someone is trying to make you decide in a hurry, they are probably giving you a bad deal. Walk away. If someone has a panic attack, start breathing regularly and loudly. The person that is panicking will subconsciously start breathing in rhythm with you. When a group of people laugh, they tend to look at the person they like the most. Nervousness and excitement have the same body reaction, so if you're nervous for a speech, trick yourself into thinking you're actually excited. If you think someone is watching you, fake a yawn, then watch them. Get someone to contribute to an idea and they will more likely accept it. If you whisper to someone, it's more likely they will whisper back even if there's no good reason to lower your voice. If you want to make someone feel uncomfortable, look at their forehead while you're talking to them. If you want somebody to open up to you, ask them a question. If the person only partially answers it, remain silent and keep eye contact. This will pressure the person into talking more. If you want to be more persuasive, reduce the use of the words I think and I believe. Touching someone on their shoulder or on their knee creates a stronger emotional bond with that person. Chew gum if you are still nervous. Our brains assume that if we are eating, then we are not in any immediate danger, lowering our fight or flight response. When you approach a group of people, notice if they turn their feet towards you or away from you. If their feet point away from you, you are probably not welcome. Subtly nodding when people are talking to you indicates that you are genuinely interested in what they are having to say and they're going to like you more. If you take a moment to look at someone's eye color when meeting them, you'll be giving them the perfect amount of eye contact. If there is a mirror behind where you are ordering, you are less likely to be rude because nobody wants to see themselves actually be rude. If you buy the first pitcher at the bar with your friends, you'd be surprised how far you could go by saying, I bought the first one. If someone is making jokes at your expense, act like you can't hear them and ask them to repeat it multiple times. By the time they say it a third or fourth time, nobody's laughing. When someone remembers you, they are most likely going to remember the first memory and the last memory of you. So make sure you always leave a good last impression too. After you have learned how to do something new and have done it yourself, the fastest way to retain that information is to teach somebody else. If you have a song stuck in your head and you can't get it out, try and listen to the whole song all the way through while singing it. Your brain is treating the song like an unfinished task in your subconscious. Plan something for every Wednesday that you can look forward to. You'll start to look forward to it on Monday, and by the time Wednesday comes around, you're already halfway through the week and almost to the weekend. If you ask someone to do a small favor for you, their subconscious mind is going to register that they like you because they're doing a favor for you. Showing the palms of your hands while talking to someone subconsciously communicates that you have nothing to hide and that you can be trusted. Whenever you're introducing a new idea to someone and you lead with the words, "This might not be for you, but," it intrigues their interest and makes it feel like it probably is for them. If you need to remember to do something tomorrow, put something in your room out of place. If you don't want to get out of bed, throw your pillow across the room. The next day, you will see this item out of place and it will jog your memory of what you need to accomplish. If you're procrastinating, just stop telling yourself how much work you have to do. This will overwhelm you. Instead, tell yourself you only have to work for 5-10 minutes, and then you're likely going to continue working past those minutes. People who are lying will normally blink more than normal, hide the palms of their hands, glance up to the right, mess with their hair, or use abnormally long sentences. If you're trying to get over a breakup, do not use fictional scenarios. Imagining your person with someone new is only going to make you more angry and sad about something that's not even real. If you want to create a deeper connection with someone you're interested in, ask them these two questions. What do you think we have in common? And what do you like most about me? If you are suffering from racing thoughts, use the 3-3-3 rule. Name 3 things you see, 3 things you hear, and 3 parts of your body. This will help center your mind and bring you back to the present. When someone apologizes for something that you don't feel like was that big of a deal to apologize for, they're probably telling you subconsciously what actually bothers them if it was done to them. If they apologize for interrupting you, they probably really just don't like being interrupted themselves. Follow for more psychology hacks.
I would strongly advise that you guys rewatch what he said, because a lot of things he said is actually based in psychology. Like, this is a real life subconscious things. Like, there was one he said that stuck out to me, because I tell a lot of people this, because a lot of people are like, because you know how some people don't like to give information or don't like to teach people new skills if they're not getting something for it. But I always tell people, like, listen, if you teach someone something, you yourself are going to get better. And I've noticed that with everything I do. Like, I don't try to gatekeep anything. I usually tell people how I set things up and how I do things, just for me to also get better, and they can get better, and, you know, we all get better. That's kind of the goal of life, is for everyone to just be better.
Have you seen that conspiracy theory that Brad Pitt and Benicio del Toro are the same guy?
No.
It's actually, they look identical. It's so weird, man. And then stuff like when he won his Oscar, who gave him the award? Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt's wife. So
Oh my God.
It's just him with old makeup on to make his eyes think. It's Brad Pitt, bro. 100% Benicio del Toro as Brad Pitt's greatest role.
It's a real life role. If this ends up being the greatest punking of all time.
I think Brad Pitt is the greatest actor of all time. He's won an Oscar as a different character. He's genius, bro. Brad Pitt's the king.
This could be real.
Yeah, I think it
He
is.
looks so good.
It's him, man.
Now, if it's not,
I love
who's done that? Who's gone? Oh my God.
That's my favourite bit. That someone sat there once and was like, you know what? I reckon Brad Pitt and Benicio del Toro are the same guy. And then the pictures line up. They line up so well. You're like, oh fuck, it might be the same guy. Actually, have you ever seen them together? I haven't. I've never looked for them.
Imagine.
Well, they've done a movie together, but so did Lindsay Lohan with herself. Like, that's... You know, I've seen Parent Trap. They don't mean shit.
Nah, he's being honest, though, because, like, there's been a lot of movies where people duel themselves. For example, Tyler Perry. He plays Medea and Tyler Perry in the same movie, so I can see that being possible. Brad Pitt, though, I'm not sure. I think there might be a height difference with them, but I wouldn't be surprised, man. Hollywood can get away with a lot of things that we wouldn't even understand or know. through CGI and all those type of technologies, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, if you guys like the video, please like the video. Remember, like goal is 1,000 likes. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe. Stream coming this week. Remember to stay tuned. Today's Monday for me, so stream should be coming sometime this week. I'm gonna let y'all know. I'm gonna post it in my community tab, so if you haven't tapped into my community tab, make sure to stay on the lookout. We had 150 people last stream, so this new stream, hopefully we get more people and we're gonna be litty. So thank you for watching. Leave a like and God's gonna give you an amazing life. Catch y'all in the next video. Peace out.
Thank you all for watching this here video. Please like and subscribe.